Episode 18 is about to be in the bag. I'm here with my other co-host, Conspiracy Brother. How you doing, good sir?
Hey. Glad to be here. It's been a while. Glad to be back.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah,
All
but I said
right,
I'm glad
all
to
right.
be back. Glad to be what has it been, a month?
About I think 3 weeks. We had to skip last week, but we're back at it. You know, doing the thing.
And
Um,
we're
also, we are also joined by a special guest, a good friend of ours in various political business circles. Our brother from another, as always, who's chopping it up with us, keeping with our theme. Not rocket science, brother. How you doing, good sir?
I'm outstanding. Thank you for having me, brothers. I appreciate this opportunity to come and chop it up with you and bring some knowledge and viewpoint.
Oh yeah, for sure. And conspiracy brother, we got a lot of topics, a lot of spicy uh, happenings going on in the news. So yeah, if you had anything you wanted to add before we get into it, since we're back for episode 18, anything you'd like to add?
uh yeah, just to say that we are streaming on Rumble and Odyssey right now as well. So if you are someone who is trying to get away from YouTube, somebody who likes to support alternative or independent, I guess it wouldn't be independent, but alternative streaming sources or services. We are available on Rumble and Odyssey. Believe it's same thing. Uncomfy Truth Political Podcast. You can look us up there and find our catalog and our streams. So that's all I got.
Yeah, most definitely appreciate that plug once again. And yeah, we will be back at it the next couple weeks. I'm going to keep these going. So for now, I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen, and we could pop right into our topic. First topic of the day, of the evening, if you will. So let me know, gentlemen, when you can see my screen. I'm good to go on my end. Conspiracy Brothers, so you can feel free to.
Yeah, I've accepted it. It hasn't come up yet. Let me try it one more time.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. Let's see. Might have it. No. It's looks like it's trying to load up. So
Okay, it's coming. I gotta hold on. I gotta hop on a stronger Wi-Fi. Hold on.
this is our thumbnail. So as you all can see, uh, this is what we have right now. To give you a kind of an idea of the topics we're going to be discussing in some capacity today. Try it one more time. It is not up yet. Well, looks like he might have dropped out.
We just
So
lost him.
yeah, and so in the meantime, I guess I could try to pull some of the articles up. Let me see. I know I have some of them. Let's see. I did text most of them. Let me see. Um, Give me 1 second. So I suppose since we'll keep with the Middle East, which is where conservative brother wanted to start, I'll look at I'll pull up this article from RT. Let's see. Share screen. Okay. And so from RT, which is Russia Today.
Russia Today.
Says, U.S. unleashes strikes across Middle East. Live updates. U.S. and U.K. bombed 36 targets in Yemen. The new bombing follows a series of airstrikes in Iraq and Syria. And this is doesn't have an author, so it says the U.S. and U.K. have carried out a series of combined air and sea launch strikes against at least 36 targets at 13 locations across Yemen, the Central Command announced on Saturday. Let's see if Conservative Brother's back. So he's back. And Conservative Brother, if you want to share your screen again, I'll give you the screen to share. I'm just since you were gone, I just decided to try to move forward.
Oh yeah.
The joint operation was carried out by Tomahawk missiles launched from U.S. Navy ships and FA-18 fighter bombers launched from the aircraft carrier USS Eisenhower. The U.S. Central Command said the raid targeted, quote, multiple underground storage facilities, command and control, missile systems, UAV storage and operation sites, radars, and helicopters, end quote. Quote, these strikes are intended to degrade Houthi capabilities used to continue their reckless and unlawful attacks on U.S. and U.K. ships, as well as international commercial shipping, end quote, CENTCOM said. Earlier on Saturday, the U.S. struck 6 locations in Yemen, stating they contained Houthi cruise missiles set to be launched at ships in the Red Sea. U.S. Central Command reported on X, formerly Twitter. In response, the Houthis are set to, quote, meet escalation with escalation, end quote, according to a senior political official and spokesman Mohammed al-Bukaiti. Quote, our military operations against the Zionist entity will continue until the aggression against Gaza stops, no matter what sacrifices it costs us, end quote, he wrote on X. Yemen's Houthi rebels have been attacking shipping in the region in solidarity with Palestinians since the breakout of the Israel-Hamas conflict in October last year. Initially targeting only Israeli-affiliated vessels, the Houthis later began attacking the U.S. and UK-owned ships after the coalition launched strikes against Yemen. The latest assault on Saturday came following a series of airstrikes on Iraq and Syria this Friday. Washington claimed it targeted members of the Islamic resistance movement and other, quote, Iranian-backed, quote, militias in response to the drone strike that killed 3 U.S. soldiers at a military facility in Jordan last weekend. Now, I think, what is it? The Kingdom of Jordan has said that this was not in Jordan, but it was in Syria. So I'm not sure, where we should stand on that. But just based on what I read, does anybody want to kind of dive into with any comments on the situation? I'll kind of let you all take first crack, whoever wants to go.
Man, here we are again, right? We are out here minding everybody else's business and making additional reasons to engage in these conflicts with these other groups. And I understand definitely getting back for, the service persons that were lost here recently. I definitely am not here to say that shouldn't be dealt with, but it just feels like it's more a tit for tat type of program instead of being strategically about how we get rid of the issue altogether. Yeah, a lot of people in the world do not like the United States. However, the United States wants to run the world, and that's why they don't like us. So I think that we need to have that discussion in parallel to this. But I know that mass media controlled by the White House does not get paid to engage in challenging the White House, especially the Democrats. I mean, the Republicans get challenged basically all the time, and I'm not here to root for Republicans, but in terms of Democrats right now, they are basically unchallenged by anybody in the media of a significant proportion. But I'm sure, conservative brother, you feel a little differently on that if they're being challenged.
Yeah, man, it's a sticky situation we're in, but at the same time, military industrial complex is going to do what it does. And it just, me looking at, I look at things more of kind of like a macro view as well. How, and I talked about this before in our group chats. The Republicans, they were the original warmongers. I mean, they had a nice run. Talking about 90s, Iraq war, all the way through the 2000s, and, Bush Jr. doing his thing. And just the fact that we always find a way to go over to these countries. We're always there for the money and the oil. One thing about Trump, though, I have a lot of issues with him. Usually he's honest about, hey, we're in Syria for the oil. So what we've been seeing these past 10 years is that while the Republicans, we got a lot of issues with they're still the uniparty, the Mitt Romneys, the Mitch McConnells, the warmongers, that's really the stronghold of the Republican Party, the warmongers in there. We've seen this evolution of the Democrats going from this work for the middle class, we got your back, to becoming the very warmongers we were trying to escape from with the Republicans. And nothing's been more crazy than that with the Ukraine war, with, obviously all this business we're doing in the Middle East now, continuing the agenda. And unfortunately, whether it's ended up being Trump or Biden in office, either one of those presidents, they have to bow down to the Israel regime. And I've talked about this. They're going to have to bow down to the military-industrial complex. They have to pledge allegiance to Israel. They're both pro-Israel, so we're both pretty screwed on that account. And they have to kind of bow down to the intelligence community as well. So there isn't going to be another president that's going to somehow push against the Israel regime, as we've seen. And Israel, not to get too off basis, but we know there's ties to the Mossad op with Epstein's. That's pretty much one of the main reasons why Israel has such a tight grip on the U.S. Whether it's Trump or Biden, they are kind of lockstep, like ball and chain with Israel for a number of reasons. So we're just seeing it with, Yemen, Syria, Iraq, all this stuff, now we've got the Houthis and, Hamas going at it. Well, the Houthis going at it, with the Red Sea and all those attacks. But it just, once again, goes to show that the industrial complex is going to keep moving forward. We're going to keep going through these conflicts despite the damage or despite, whatever casualties end up in the way. We lost those two Marines recently. So, yeah, just from not to be too black-pilled or whatnot or hopeless, but they're just doing more of what they're going to do. So we just got to kick back and just watch the chaos, watch the train wreck in real time. Conspiracy brother, got anything to add?
Yeah. So, this is kind of the last episode we talked a little bit about the whole concept the U.S. likes to use called the international rules-based order. And like I talked about how a lot of that is really just BS that the U.S. uses to justify any and all actions that it takes in the international and domestic context, right? Mm-hmm. And so I just looked just for my own, to humor myself. I looked at the distance between Sana'a, Yemen, and Jerusalem, Israel, just to kind of get an idea. It's roughly 1,700 kilometers. It'd be about 34 days walking and 31 hours driving to get there. That would be the distance it would take. The ships that pass through the Gulf of Aden to get through to the Red Sea and then, the Suez Canal, which cuts off significant time going around the southern part of Africa, around South Africa, for trade, international shipping, and things like that. The mouth of that is the Gulf of Aden or Aden, which is, fed from the eastern side by Yemen and Djibouti and Eritrea on the western side. And the United States and the UK have taken it upon themselves to assert their own military dominance over the country of Yemen. Who would say, or who would decide that any ships, any military vessels who will be offering aid to Israel while they are perpetrating a genocide against the Palestinians are not welcome, are not allowed. And, one of the things that I always like to think about and to try to contextualize for myself is, what if that was happening here? What if a ship from China or Russia was sailing between Florida and Cuba, or Mexico and I don't know, I can't think of what is the westernmost islands in the Caribbean, right? Or even Venezuela and Trinidad and Tobago, against the US's wishes. How would they respond, right? When we look at, the wider Ukraine-Russia war and the ways that the United States would like to portray the sovereignty of the Ukrainian nation and Ukrainian people, even at the expense of Russia's own perceived or real national security interests, it's the hypocrisy is it's blatant, it's obvious. And so, again, keeping with that whole theme of the rules-based order, right? What that goes to show is that there is no international law, right? America is not a party to the International Criminal Court or the International Court of Justice. In fact, when Bush was president, he had a law passed through Congress that if any U.S. citizen were to be tried at the International Criminal Court, that the United States would attack The Hague, would invade The Hague, and I believe it's called the Hague Invasion Act, right? So just to show how little we respect international law. So just to contextualize all of that, what I'm saying, and to look at it in the context, the United States is bombing a country who they funded the bombing of, Yemen, through Saudi Arabia for the last decade. Saudi Arabia has been bombing Yemen with U.S. manufactured weapons, aircraft, cluster munitions, training, in order to build pipelines, if I'm not mistaken, in the name of trying to overthrow a hostile government in Yemen, the Houthis. The Houthis, I think their real name is Ansar Allah. They're actually like the government. They're the government of Yemen. So it would be like if someone tried to overthrow the U.S. government by bombing the hell out of the United States until the government fell or the people revolted and said, "Hey, we can't keep dealing with this." And so you just see this. It's a hypocrisy on a massive scale. But what you also see, and Tucker Carlson talked about this, and the unfortunate thing is that we live in a world where you always have to qualify your statements when you deal with certain people, because it isn't enough to be able to take pertinent information from people and let that speak for whatever specific situation you're dealing with. You always have to qualify it with, I don't support everything they say. I don't support everything they do. This person still says they may be a white supremacist, blah, blah, blah. Like, you always have to qualify how but just so without having to go through that whole thing. Tucker Carlson says, you've heard, we've all heard the expression "FU money," where, a person is so rich, you can't touch them. But Yemen has something called FU poverty. They've been bombed so much over the last decade that they have nothing to lose. And so they're willing to fight, to stand up for whatever they think is morally or ethically right in the world, in the region, with their cultural and religious ally against the world hegemon, and they're doing all that they can. Right, you can't bomb them really anymore because they're so destroyed that there really isn't. If you look at our thumbnail, for the video, you can see that one of the images is going to be it's Gaza, but Yemen looks essentially the same way in a lot of places. It's just bombed out. And so you have nothing to lose. You stand up for what you believe in, you fight for your own just cause because you've already suffered more than most people could stand to survive anyway. So I'll leave it at that. But I'll open up your screen share.
Great point. Great point. Yep. And then not rocket science, brother. Did you have I think you were about to say something as well.
No, I was just in amazement about some of the information he shared. I'm 100% understanding this is a little bit of chaos, so I'm good.
Yeah. All right. So I'll just for the sake of time. Okay, it's a short read from Redacted. So we got another article here. Since we're already on the Middle Eastern topic, U.S. strikes in Middle East, a strategic mistake. Iran. This comes from Redacted. Over at I don't see the name of it.
RT, another RT article.
RT's Redacted, right? Or is that just art? That's different.
Russia Today, actually.
Oh, Russia Today. I don't know why I confused them with Redacted. But Redacted, another great YouTube channel. All right, Tehran's foreign ministry has commented on recent operations targeting militia groups in Syria and Iraq. The U.S. has made a huge blunder by attacking targets in Iraq and Syria, as it will only further inflame tensions in the already turbulent region. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Nasir Kanani has said. In a statement on Saturday, Kanani condemned the U.S. strikes on militia groups in the two countries. American officials have said that that the attacks targeted groups linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard, known as IRGC, Quds Force, an elite secret unit specializing in foreign operations. It came in response to an earlier attack on the U.S. military post in Jordan that left 3 service members dead and wounded. The ministry's spokesperson insisted that Washington had violated the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Iraq and Syria, calling the decision another adventure, strategic mistake by the American government, which will have no result other than the escalation of tension and instability in the region. He also stressed that by launching the strikes, the U.S. was helping Israel, which is locked in conflict with the Palestinian armed group Hamas. The latter has close ties to Tehran and attacked the Jewish state in early October, with the fight resulting in tens of thousands of deaths, including many civilians, and unprecedented destruction. Kanani added that the root cause of the current region-wide crisis is the occupation of the Israel regime and its operations in Gaza, as well as the genocide of Palestinians with the unlimited support of the United States. However, the spokesperson did not address U.S. claims that it had attacked Iranian-affiliated groups. Tehran previously stated that regional groups that attacked American military facilities were acting independently and not on Iran's orders. On Friday, commenting on the new wave of U.S. airstrikes in the region, U.S. President Joe Biden stressed that the U.S. does not seek conflict in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. Well, that's news to me. But warned of retaliation against those who do harm to Americans. Senior U.S. officials have also said that they do not want the conflict with Iran. Prior to the U.S. moves, Iranian President Ebrahim Raisi also said that Tehran would not be the initiator of any war, but vowed to respond firmly to anyone who would pressure his country. Love those short reads. All right. So what we got on, fellas?
So I guess my thing is immediately like this. It's very interesting that Iran is now stating that they will respond. I really am like, this is going to turn into something else if they really respond. I don't think Iran's going to do nothing of notable sort that we're going to really hear about, because it's just going to go back and forth, right? The U.S. is looking for a reason. And so part of them going over there, it's a mess, right? If we get attacked, we respond accordingly. But there's two metrics you're trying to engage with. One, you want to respond accordingly so that they know that they can't just touch you and not have consequence. But
Right.
secondly, if these are repeat offenders, you want to disable their ability to offend. So I think that the U.S. claimed they've done this before and they didn't do it well enough. And there was this discussion. It was Lloyd Austin, I believe. He said, essentially, we've disabled some of their capabilities in the past, but we didn't. We need to go in and disable more of their capabilities. And I'm like, well, okay. Are these guys who you're claiming they are or not? Because it feels like you're not taking this as seriously as you want to claim it is once they touch you.
That's based. Conspiracy brother.
So here's the thing, kind of going back to the whole rules-based order. Now, it is sufficient. You have on both sides of the aisle, you have members of Congress and the president calling for the U.S. to strike Iran, right? To retaliate against Iran specifically. Now, I've watched Garland Nixon and Scott Ritter and Danny Haiphong and the Duran, specifically Alexander Mercurius and Alex Christoforou. I have listened to and watched Peter Lavelle with The Gaggle and George Samueli, or his show on RT, Crosstalk. Watch some Lionel. And what I've come to, and a few others, right? Brian Berletic, military channel. And what I've gathered is this: Iran has a lot of bombs. They don't have nuclear weapons, but they have a lot of bombs. And they've hidden a lot of their bombs all over, everywhere, underground, in the mountains, like in the mountains. And so, and they've got a very advanced anti-aircraft or anti-missile system, anti-aircraft and anti-missile system in Iran. And so what I've seen and what I've heard is that if the U.S. was willing to escalate anything with Iran, they would drop thousands of bombs a day on Israel until Israel ceased to exist.
You said Iran would do this?
Yes, Iran. They would drop thousands of bombs a day. And Iran, Tehran, which is the capital of Iran, is probably, let me look just to be Jerusalem.
Also, too, conspiracy brother, I wanted to add as well. Once again, I don't know if this is a right-wing talking point or whatnot, but I feel like one of the reasons I feel like Biden, for whatever reason, 100% supports Israel, is that wasn't there some funds? There were like $1 billion, like a couple billion in funds that Biden unfroze not long before the Hamas attacks. And once again, they were able to, he took the Houthis, and once again, there's aspects of the Houthis, I agree with it, whatnot, but apparently they had the Houthis in the Yemen on the U.S. terror watch list, and Biden took them off. And I feel like since we're funding Iran, basically, since he unfroze those funds, Iran got the funding they needed to not only back Hamas, but also they're using that to destroy, obviously, the global shipping and the Red Sea attacks. So what's your thought on that? That led to the 2 Marines getting killed, which I don't believe the full story behind, but like, what do you think? How that connection with Iran and us giving them the funds?
Well, I think a lot of that is overstated. Iran, there are a lot of like, and I'm this sounds kind of like, I don't know, like elitist or whatever, but there are a lot of smart people in Iran. They have a lot of scientists, a lot of like mathematicians and things like that. They have a lot of them. They produce a lot of them at an international level. And so I think it's an excuse. I think it's very possible, based on what I've I've looked into, I've heard compelling evidence on both sides that either Israel was in on this to try and give it a reason to invade Gaza, or that they were so I guess so checked out of the situation that they were caught off guard. I've heard multiple arguments on both sides. I still lean more toward the belief that Israel knew this was happening, because I heard that there had been alerts and stuff given to the Israeli government about a potential attack, and there was no one kind of like they sent the military away or something like that, or gave them all like time off coincidentally around this time. So I'm not sure.
Oh yeah, this is the unpenetrable Iron Dome. Apparently they got warnings 10 days before. Apparently Netanyahu, I mean, even like weeks before the Hamas attacks in October, there was almost a brewing civil war. There was like a lot of groups looking at
people wanted to get Netanyahu out. They were trying to get him out. They were protesting him for the way that he was essentially turning the country into a theocracy.
Exactly.
Using the courts to make Israel a theocracy. So they were protesting him.
Yeah.
And so this is really giving him a lot of cover. And people are getting really entrenched in Zionism. People who, would not consider themselves Zionists up until this point. But the thing I wanted to say before I forget is what we need to remember. So I just looked, Jerusalem to Tehran is like a 22-hour drive. It'd be a 22-hour drive, an 18-day walk. So it's really close. But when we look at the situation, they want to bomb Iran, and they want to use the justification that these militants were backed by Iran, trained, funded by, or armed by Iran, right? That's their justification. That because Iran has a personal hand in arming these individuals, they want to have Iran suffer consequences, right? But when you look at the flip side, again, bringing this to the Russia and the whole international rules-based order, the U.S. and NATO have been funding Ukraine for the last 2 years with weapons, with money, really sustaining their government up to this point. They just sunk Ukraine just sunk a Russian destroyer in the Black Sea with the aid of the U.S. and NATO or European drones. Should Russia be able to say then, under those same conditions, that we're going to bomb United States targets in Poland, in Ukraine, or United States, UK, NATO, whatever, European targets in Romania, in Poland, in the Baltics? You see what I'm saying? Whenever you hear the United States...
Tell me we're in World War III without telling me we're in World War III. Continue, though.
And that's the situation. We talked about this earlier, and you were saying something like something about World War III, and I said, depending on who wins it, they won't ever even call it World War III. And so I think it's very possible that given the context of the situation, we won't know whether we're in World War III or not until we're significantly invested in the battle, right? But all the buildup that you would expect to come from an international conflict of that size and magnitude, I think is the groundwork for that is thoroughly being laid at this moment, right? The developing world, the third world, or the second world, however you want to look at it, the global South, even though I hate that term, the outgroup, the rest of the nations who aren't G7, who aren't G20, they're finally deciding that America is no longer strong enough to beat them all by itself. So, you look at the way that the European economy has been weakened over these last 2 years. The U.S. economy has been weakened over these last 2 years. The way that the U.S., Europe, NATO, or whatever you want to call it, has lost so many weapons and tied up so much energy and money into trying to keep Ukraine afloat, that all these other conflicts that they're trying to do simultaneously are not going to be able to be done, right? Something has got to give. You're not going to be able to protect Ukraine, protect Israel, and protect Taiwan. And you're not going to be able to make these postures globally and have any real effect on anybody or
Bet.
any one country. So
Bet. Not rocket science, brother. You had a you said you were about to say something? Did you
Yeah,
want to?
yeah, yeah. So easy one here. I really love this idea conspiracy brought up about World War III. This is a novel concept, at least to me, that the idea that World War III was going to look like what 1 and 2 did, where it was just this massive conflict that's just ongoing in your face and it's nothing but pure war. Maybe World War III is what this is. Maybe this is it. Maybe it's not looking like the past 2 wars. Maybe it's a bunch of uh, disparate conflicts happening here and there, but they're all interconnected and they just never seem to end. I
Or
just
or this could be Cold War II and World War III closing. War
Cold
II
War
and
II
World
is
War
also
III
one.
close. Maybe. But great point.
That's
Great point.
that's a really good one. That's a really good one. Yeah,
I
I
could
love
take
it.
that.
and I think that is possible, right? This could end up being just another Cold War. But I think it's one of those situations where I was talking to a coworker and we were talking about how when you look at startup companies, when people do like venture capitalists and angel investors, when they invest in companies, or even like just like Kickstarter and Patreon, things like that, when they do those kind of not gifts and go, but Kickstarter and I forget the other one. But when somebody's got an idea for a product or a company or a service, they generate more donations or they generate more investors when they don't have a clear plan or product to tell anyone about, right? When it's just an idea, hey, I've got this idea, they get more investors than when they say, I've got an idea and this is what it is, right? The desire for people to invest in something they don't really know about is greater than for them to invest in something that they can see concretely. And I think it works the same way in this respect. For example, when you look at tattoos, when you look at any kind of pain or any kind like a when you play a sport, when you ride a roller coaster, when you drive really fast in a car, you do these kinds of things the first time and you're nervous, right? You've never done it before. I don't know what to expect. And then after you've done it or after you've experienced it, no matter what even if it was terrible, if you don't die, if it doesn't cause you severe, significant setback, you can do it again. And so what the world is starting to see is Russia has taken the United States' best punch. You've been sanctioned to hell, right? You're on like the 12th or 13th round of sanctions. You can't be in SWIFT. You can't trade in the international marketplace. You're cut off from the G8. Used to be the G8. Trump kicked Russia out, so it's the G7. You can't trade your oil on the international marketplace. They're going to put artificial caps on what Russia could charge for oil, for crude oil per barrel. All these different restrictions, freezing Russian assets, stealing Russian assets, or confiscation of Russian property, right? All these different restrictions that they've placed on the country of Russia and Russian people, and they've survived it, right? So short of a nuclear response from the United States, which they wouldn't do because it would be met with a nuclear retaliation from the Soviets, or besides the Soviets, I'm propagandized too. The Russians, right? You've survived. So now the rest of the world can say, hey, Russia survived it. We can survive it too. We can form coalitions together to work outside of the United States dominated global hegemony and do something that benefits all of our countries together, something that benefits us all. We don't have to be afraid. Somebody has survived this. Somebody took on the bully and survived. And so that's what you see with these interactions. You bomb Yemen for 10 years, if not directly, indirectly through Qatar, through Saudi Arabia, through Oman, you bombed Yemen. So the Yemeni people have nothing to lose. The people of Gaza had the Hamas fighters, right? The Hamas militants have had to learn to fight in ways within the system of restriction that the state of Israel has imposed. The people are dying. The citizens, the civilians of Gaza, the children, the women, the non-combatants are dying. But they were going to die because they're not trained in military guerrilla warfare. They were always going to die as a result of Israeli occupation. But you haven't stopped Hamas. You haven't stopped their ideology. You haven't stopped their anger. And so this problem is blown up exponentially in a way that I don't think anyone, the United States, the West, the backers of Israel itself could have foreseen, because they're so used to everyone sitting quietly while they have occupied a land that people lived on. And the world is saying no more.
Sounds a bit familiar, kind of like how we pulled out of a certain country. What was that? It starts with an A, I think August 2020. Afghanistan. That shit show, and how we spent 20 years there trying, build Afghanistan back up in their army and whatnot. And guess what? We back out of there, leave behind the Afghan allies in the Afghan army that couldn't even hold back the Taliban for 2 weeks or like a week. So a lot of similar sort of going in there, imperialism, guns blazing, and guess what? We didn't really do a damn thing. We sucked their resources, but yeah. So I had to get that off my chest. But anything else, y'all, while we at this article?
Right. When you said that, it reminded me of something. We were talking about the military-industrial complex earlier. And one thing that came to mind was this basic sense is, are we, and I know this is basic, but it just folds into this whole thing.
Yeah.
Are we creating opportunities to go into other countries, conflict with other countries, and do things in order to keep our military sharp and to just justify such a huge military so we can be a bully? Or are we actually being bullied ourselves so much? We're not. No,
Nah.
we just make conflict. We just make conflicts.
The first one for me.
And see, I think this is the interesting thing. When you look at the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s, America was essentially the only superpower, right? They never took China seriously. And Russia, the Soviet Union, ceased to exist. So America was able to exert its power on every developed country in the world. Europe was essentially a vassal state, even though it's a continent and it's a body of countries. It's not a single country. It operated as a vassal state of the United States, right? Canada is a vassal state of the United States. Japan, since World War II and the occupation of Japan, has been a vassal state of the United States. And so the United States really never updated its military infrastructure or training in a way that made it capable of fighting a war like the war that Russia and Ukraine are fighting right now, right? Russia has engaged in other conflicts of this sort, right? Even dealing with in 2008 when they fought Georgia. They invaded Georgia. The war with Chechnya, which I would believe was in the late 90s, right? And so when you look at on the global stage, the countries who have actually been engaged in peer-to-peer military conflicts, you've got Russia, the country of Georgia, Chechnya, which is a part of the Russian Federation, Ukraine now. I guess you could look at Kosovo and like Serbia and those, and then like that's it. The United States was in Afghanistan fighting people who would not be considered a military peer. Iraq against people who you would not consider a military peer. These bombing campaigns, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, those are not peers. Somalia, not a peer, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we would like to think ourselves bullies, but we do not have people who have been in positions that have actually seen active combat. So they have not had to and are not capable of leading in the face of a peer-to-peer enemy. And so we're living
that's a
off
dangerous
of right. You're
Sorry,
living
go
off
ahead.
of glories of the 40s. Is what you're doing, because that's the last time the U.S. was engaged in a conflict with a peer, and they won, right? Because even the Korean War ended up in a stalemate. And you fighting the North Koreans, you may be able to argue they were peers, although they were backed by the Soviets. I don't know that I would necessarily say the Koreans were peers to the United States, but even that ended up in a stalemate, right? That's why you have the demilitarized zone. So,
Based. I don't know what else to say. America got a lot of work to do. We pump our chests up like we're the best, but just left $2 billion of military equipment in Afghanistan, and we ain't got the right allies. We ain't as tough as we seem. So, great commentary, conspiracy brother. Now we gonna slip into going back to little. Here we go. Joy Reid of MSNBC, notable political pundit on the left, team left. So she got a little situation, I think this week or this past week, where she got caught on a hot mic. Those not familiar with the hot mic, that's where you think it's recording's off and the camera or audio still rolling. So she did a little bit of a reveal, saying the quiet part out loud. So yeah, she's definitely making the rounds through the viral moments. So let's go ahead and take a listen. Then let's go ahead and get our thoughts on this. So here we go. MSNBC's own Joy Reid.
If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. And Congress needs to get it done.
Starting another fucking war. It's done. Before we go, I just want to apologize very quickly. I was chatting during a clip that was playing, and we try to keep this show very PG-13, so I just want to apologize to anyone who was listening to my behind-the-scenes chatter. Deeply, deeply apologize for that.
All right, not rocket science, brother. What
the heck? So I didn't even catch what she said. She just said not in a war.
Start Biden. She said Biden starting another fucking war. I can play it again though. Hold on. I'll play it again.
Weekend, President Biden said he's ready to take action if Congress is serious about solving the border issue.
If that bill were the law today, I'd shut down the border right now and fix it quickly. And Congress needs to get it done.
Starting another fucking war. It's done. Before we go, I just want to apologize very quickly.
Catch that?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the Biden part, but she definitely said, "Oh, starting another fucking war." So that's
go ahead on that.
Just to give some context, what I believe she's discussing, Biden talking about how if Congress passed the legislation for the border, which I think he's trying to tie to funding Ukraine still, or either it's more funding for Israel. He would be willing to shut the border down. And so he's essentially trying to use the border as a leverage point for funding for Israel or Ukraine, which the conservatives have kind of drawn as their red line because their base doesn't want to fund any more foreign excursions.
Well, that's my issue with the conservative right as well. Even though I got conservative brother daily, it's my moniker. At the same time, some of my views may surprise you on certain things. But basically, as pro-Ukraine as the left is how insane the right is with Israel. And neither one are based. So I think, once again, Joy Reid's little slip up here is just a greater sort of revealed moment. Joy Reid, she's making her money at MSNBC, doing what she has to do. But how many pundits besides her carry the same views but aren't saying anything because they're just getting paid to be a puppet? Same with Fox News. You can make the same argument with Fox News. Sure, there's a couple liberal-minded people behind the camera. In front of the camera as well. I would have more respect for Joy Reid if she fully believed that. If she fully believed, yes, Biden, war, this, yeah, let's bring it on board. Don't worry about the border. I have less respect for her seeing that she's thinking one way. She really knows Biden's, not doing what he's supposed to do, start another fucking war. I'd have more respect for her if she really believed that. But her slip up, her hot mic slip up, is just a bigger reveal on how many pundits that most of America, kind of the mainstream normies that just sort of watch their favorite news channel, whether it's Fox News or CNN, how many of them just sort of sit there and eat up the propaganda by these pundits that may look like them or talk like them, or from, whether it's a old white guy Hannity or Joy Reid, sister, she's a sister. And they're really just puppets who don't think or don't really say what's on their mind because they're paid to do a job. They're paid to push the propaganda. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the 2012 Smith Modernization Act that passed with Obama. And that basically gave the whole corporate press the ability to give full-on propaganda, half-truths, some things we left out in the story, and all these pundits can go in and they'll give you like this is the thoughts on this clip. Before we set this clip up, this is everything you need to know. This is the context. This is how you should be upset. Run the clip. All right, just in case you didn't understand what the clip meant, this is how you're supposed to feel about this. So this is Fox News. This is CNN that do all this propaganda. So I think Joy Reid's slip up, I'm not like more angry. I mean, I'm a little more angry at her now, but she ain't the only one. And it's just very revealing of the corporate propaganda machine on the right and the left, and the pundits who are just put here to spoon feed it to you. And guess what? They're not going to have those views, as we can see here, that you might think they have because they're telling you about it 10 hours a day. So that's my thought on this. But feel free to hop in, y'all.
Well, one of the issues that I've seen brought up a lot, and I think it's actually pretty telling about it, is in her apology. Right, she apologizes not for the content of what she says, which is essentially that Joe Biden has just started another effing war, but she says, I'm sorry that you heard me speak this way. We try to keep the show PG-13, and so there are a lot of different ways you can kind of take that. Some have said that she knows their audience is like 60 and plus, so they don't like foul language. So she's apologizing for that. And some have said that it's a sign that she feels this way, that Joe Biden is just starting another war. And so she's just apologizing for kind of letting that slip.
She knows.
I take the approach. Say it again.
She knows what's up.
Well, yeah. And I take that approach. I take the approach that, that really she is all of them. And I think, I think to some degree, they're all, like you said, with Sean Hannity. When you look at some of his videos and you actually watch him talk and how he talks to his viewers and how he expresses certain ideas, it really seems as if he was like speaking to somebody who's mentally like delayed, right? Like the way he actually communicates, it's like he's speaking to somebody who's got some kind of developmental delay. You're not having a conversation with someone who you would think is an adult or a peer. And so even with her, like when she thought she was alone and free, no one would hear her, she voiced what I think are her real views. Her conscience leaked out.
Said the quiet part out loud. Said that quiet part out loud.
She still didn't actually condemn starting another war. She just said, starting another effing war.
She sounded a little excited, actually. A little bit.
Understanding that she didn't necessarily condemn him for it. Her truth inside her, what she holds, really, how she feels. Not her truth, but the truth that she holds sincerely inside of herself, that she is paid to suppress, is at least one that would be in shock of the fact. Whether it's shock in support or shock in disagreement with the fact that we're starting another war, right? And even you look at that, was she speaking of the war with Congress? Was she speaking of the war with migrants in Texas? Was she speaking about the war with the United States and Texas? Or was she speaking about the war in the Middle East? We don't know, because there have been so many conflicts and potential conflicts that are arising every day. Seems like since January 1st, that we can't be sure.
And it's funny you mentioned like the truths we hold, that little quote, because speaking of Black Girl Tragic, that was I think one of Kamala's books right before she ran for VP, The Truths We Hold. So it's so funny you mentioned that. The truths they do hold. You know, they have their own truth, and then there's the truth they got to spew out to the masses. So, yeah.
Right.
Great point. Not rocket science, brother. Anything you want to add before we move on?
Yeah, so I gotta represent from my truth. Two quick things. One, well, the first one is I know you mentioned her being a sister, and I think that brings a context to what her opinions weight should be to the viewer, right? Because people still subscribe to identity as being the basis of who they should listen to and who's for them, even when they're against them. But I do want to clarify, this woman in my book is not a sister. She's a Congolese Ghanaian born in America, and she's masquerading as a sister, born in Brooklyn or not, which she was born in Brooklyn, but that doesn't mean anything when your identity roots do not come back to this country. She's been problematic for Black America from a loyalty standpoint, and that's well documented. So she's not really the person to take too much credit of from a Black sister girl standpoint. But outside of that, her going on that hot mic and, her speaking on this, saying, this effing war thing, it's like, it's kind of really quick that she honestly should have gotten admonished for that by the studio, to be honest with you. I mean, I say that because when they have their people in place that are serving the purpose of the mass media's intention, the last person they're going to let go are the people who are most valuable to getting that propaganda out, right? So she's probably got a lot of leeway here in this ridiculous show of hers to have slip ups like that, because who else they got? So I just, for her entirely, in her opinion, I throw her out in the trash can and out back. And I would advise anybody else to do the same. But yeah, she may be expressing something that people believe, but we shouldn't even hear.
It's interesting that you bring her up too, because I want to say this is around 2016, 2017. Old blog post of hers from like 2012. She went to Harvard, okay? Joy-Ann Reid is a graduate of Harvard.
Elite class.
I think she's got a law degree from Harvard. Right?
Yeah.
But like, she has all these blog posts making fun of the former governor of Florida, Charlie Crist, calling him Miss Charlie and Miss Chrissy, essentially saying he was a homosexual and making fun of him for it. Now, as far as I know, it's never been confirmed one way or the other. But then when it came out, when the blog post resurfaced in 16 or 17, she said, actually, now, I know not rocket science, brother. I know you are very computer savvy. So this should be particularly astonishing for you to hear. But she said that Russian hackers manipulated the Internet Archive to make it seem like she made those posts all those years ago.
Wow.
That was her.
She's something else. Listen, Russians don't give a hot buttery cheese about this woman, first of all. And then secondly, the Russians don't care nothing about her.
but like I'm saying, but then to say that they manipulated the archive, so like she was basically saying like they had to time travel to manipulate the archive to put this information in, because the archive is just, it just is a snapshot of the internet in time, right? That's all. That's all. Like Wayback Machine does. It doesn't create anything. It just documents it, it stores it, it catalogs.
Russia, it's just like the left's just go-to card. Russia disinformation.
Right. So
Russia, Russia.
Right.
It is.
And
It's
so
her
she just
go-to
said
card.
Russians.
She's on record.
Right. Russians hacked her blog and created these posts in the past.
They don't give
then,
a damn.
Rachel Maddow, who's gay, well, she's a lesbian. I guess they had her come out and throw her support behind Joy and say, she supports her. She doesn't believe she would have these feelings. Some BS. But either way, I mean, nobody really has any principles.
Right.
When you get to these levels of society, whether it's politics, whether it's media, whether it's sports, right? Whether it's business, these people don't have any morals. They don't have any sacred. The only thing of value to these people is money. And I actually just finished reading 1984, and it was a quote in there that kind of talked about that. But I don't want to butcher it because I don't remember. I don't have the book. My wife is reading it now. But that's the only thing of value to these people is money. The only color they care about is green. And so whatever moral, just look at the Me Too movement. The Me Too movement was killed as soon as Joe Biden was the Democratic nominee, and he had a credible accusation of sexual assault against him, and everyone told the woman who accused him up because we had to get rid of him.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. So Joy Reid, hot mic. All right, we done got through that. More foolishness. All right, so Conspiracy Brother, did you want to I know we talked a lot about the Middle East early on in the show. Did you want to maybe read through this article? Anything maybe we haven't touched on with this aspect that you want to hit on with this?
We can kind of skip it if you want. It's just talking about how a Houthi missile got within a mile of a U.S. destroyer, and they had to use they call it close CIWS. I forget what it stands for. It's like close something weapon system, and
close in. It's a close in weapon system. So yeah, that gun is pretty fast, and so that's like that's the
but
barrel.
It's a last resort kind of weapon.
Okay.
Yeah,
we'll
and it's
talk about
interesting.
the Middle East, well, at least the Yemen Houthi situation. So,
look like it could do some damage.
We can skip this if you want.
Okay, yeah. So more chaos on the Middle East, obviously. Israeli intelligence docs detail alleged UNRWA staff links to Hamas, including 12 accused in October 7th attack. So very interesting. This is from CBS News. Conspiracy Brother, or maybe not rocket science brother, if you wanted to maybe read the article or maybe half the article.
Yeah.
Chop this
Let
one
me
up.
read this one because this one I have particular, like, I don't know too much, but I've been hearing about it a lot. So of course, coming out of Tel Aviv, an Israeli intelligence document shared on Monday with CBS News and a number of other Western news outlets spells out allegations against a dozen UN employees whom Israel says participated. Hold on, pause. I didn't realize Israel claimed this, but okay. Israel says participated in Hamas October 7th terror attack. Okay. The document claims 7 staff members of UNRWA, the UN humanitarian agency that helps Palestinian refugees, stormed into Israel territory during that attack, including 2 who participated in kidnapping. Hold on. The UN humanitarian agency that helps the document claims 7 members of UNRWA stormed into Israeli territory during the attack. Okay. Put a pin in that. The allegations against UNRWA staffers prompted the U.S. and some Western countries to freeze funds vital to the work of the agency, which is a lifeline for desperate Palestinians in the war-torn Gaza. UN fired 9 of the 12 accused workers and condemned the allegations. The accusations come after years of tensions between Israel and UNRWA over its work in the Gaza Strip, where it employs roughly 13,000 people. Let me just read someone quick. U.S. Other nations pause UNRWA funding. Despite the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in the besieged territory where Israel's war against Hamas has displaced the vast majority of the population, and officials say a quarter of Palestinians are starving. Major donors, including the United States and Britain, have temporarily suspended funding. On Monday, Japan and Austria joined them in pausing assistance. This is that bullshit. I'm going to just run into this. It's bullshit because if they believe that UNRWA is doing what they're supposed to do, 12 people out of 13,000 is not someone to stop funding them over, because they are actually doing the thing you claim you care about the most. On top of Israel defending themselves, you need to protect the actual citizens who are in the way of this basically indiscriminate ass fire coming out of Israel's mouth. So if you're going to cut off the humanitarian agency because listen, Israel, first of all, the report came from Israel. They have no reason to tell the truth. Then they reported that they stormed into the country. Did they say did they say they shot somebody? They said like 2 of them did some kidnapping. Scroll up to that. What they say? They said like 2 people were involved in the kidnapping. And they say including 2 people who participated in kidnappings. Okay, so you got 12 rogue characters out of 13,000 or what have you, right? And you're going to stop funding while they're out here trying to save lives? This means that the United States wants to be complicit in supporting Israel. And it comes back to, and I want to throw this to a conspiracy, you got to unpack how the U.S. is so tied to Israel's desires, not what Israel should be legally allowed to do, like defend itself, but whatever their damn desire is, that they will support them in the most innocuous and least conspicuous ways they can, as long as they have cover. So Israel basically gave the United States cover by saying they found 12 people that somehow were adjacent enough to this act that you can claim that you have the basis to defund the entire aid agency that's been helping the people that Israel is also attacking right now. It just does not. It's like it's just more of the same, but it's really terrible. Like, you talk about being horrible. What's horrible is to stop aid, not just what Israel is doing, but also to stop aid. And for the United States to stop aid and to get all the buddies to stop giving money for aid. I heard on the news that they were going to basically stop. They're going to pull out of Gaza, I think next week or sometime within this month, because they're going to run out of money. So this is just, it's sickening. Like, the United States, of all the things they've done, where in the world do you get the basis to stop giving money over 12 people instead of driving over there and trying to help them root out the bad people? Because this happened already. These folks are busy giving food and water and shelter to these folks who are being attacked. What are we doing trying to deal with something that happened months ago by stopping the aid that's so desperately needed today? You know what? It also reminds me of all these protests, especially over in Dearborn and in Warren, about getting the American government to stop supporting Israel in their attacks on the Palestinians, and how much more justified those protests are right now, because this is just the most ignorant, stupid, and clearly malicious activity by the United States in this conflict.
A lot to unpack there, conspiracy brother.
Yeah. So I mean, you really had a lot of great points, and so that's always when I'm looking for truth, when I'm just trying to find any truth. When I can come to a conclusion, and somebody else can come to a conclusion, and somebody else can come to a conclusion completely unprompted, then that doesn't necessarily mean it's the truth. But I'd like to think that confirmation is at least a sign that our energies are going in the right direction. So UNRWA is essentially the United Nations. What is it? It's the United Nations Relief and Workers Aid. Relief and Works Agency. And there's an agency specifically set up to aid Palestinians, right? Palestinian refugees. Coincidentally, this information was released the day the ICJ ruled that Israel had to do all it could to stop perpetuating a genocide. Right. You could say that the ruling the ICJ made was not robust enough, but it at least acknowledged in a 15-1 vote, the only one dissenting vote was a Ugandan judge who has been, as a result, admonished by her country that Israel has to do more to ensure that they are not committing a genocide against the Palestinians. And you see now, like you said, right? So let's look at this. Since October 8th, let's say, 26,000 Gazans have been murdered. And I think 67,000 have been injured. And I want to say, I think they said at least 50% of them have been children, because I think 50% of the residents of Gaza are children, are minors, are 18 and under, or under 18. But what you see is the United States talks out of both sides of its mouth, right? On the one hand, article we read earlier, the United States doesn't seek to engage in any conflicts in the Middle East or anywhere else in the world. That's what they say. And the policy is we bombed 36 locations in 2 countries. We're still currently occupying Syria, who has asked repeatedly for the U.S. to leave, and they have not. So it is an illegal occupation. Bombed Libya, bombing Somalia. They have bombed Yemen, by their own standards, they bombed Yemen because, they provided the Saudis with weapons, with training, so resources. But just to be, the most conservative I can about the framing of it, they aided in the destruction of Yemen and the people there, the suffering of the people there, the humanitarian crisis that exists in Yemen. But we don't seek conflict in the Middle East. And then when you say around the world, building bases around China to surround China, continually posturing with Taiwan, with the Philippines. I think they're selling the Philippines a nuclear sub soon. Presently, they're in the process of some kind of deal with the Philippines to provide them with a nuclear sub. So, in this situation, like you said, you have 12 people out of 13,000. The United Nations has already said that there's no evidence to even justify this, right? Israeli officials have said that Gaza or Hamas was raping women. They have had to come out and admit that was a lie. They came out and said that they were beheading people. They have had to come out and say that was a lie. So we will chalk this up to yet another lie, at least until we see some kind of substantial evidence to prove otherwise. Another lie at the hands of Israel, right? In the benefit of Israel, in the aid of Israel and the Israeli state, the Zionists in the United States and globally, who would want to displace and destroy the native peoples of a place in 2024 of all time. Right? This is what you see happening. And the United States still would like to present itself, would like to project to the world that it is a moral authority or a beacon of some type of ethical or virtue to the world. It doesn't work. It doesn't. The king, like the story, the king has no clothes. The king is naked. And we can all see it. We no longer have to pretend that we are wise, having lied to ourselves, having deluded ourselves. The king is naked, and we are all awake and confident and secure enough to acknowledge it. UN Secretary Antonio Guterres called for the donors to resume funding on Sunday and said UNRWA should not be penalized over alleged actions of the dozen workers.
Listen, he's the most comprehensively sane person in this whole thing, Gutierrez. But they ain't listening to him because UN is really just a
global show for Israel. Man, I think this is why conversations like this are so important, kind of, what we've been doing here the past year and a half, Uncomfy Truths, Revolutionary Blackout Network, also shout out to Freedman Collective, Sabby Sabs and all of them. So I think, Jimmy Dore, I think what's, because people can fall for the propaganda. I'll admit, before the Hamas attacks, I was not that well-versed on Israel, Palestine. I knew that it was, Israel occupied the Palestine land for a while. There was kind of the tension. I kind of had a 50-50 look at it. And when a lot of that propaganda came out, I fell for some of it. I still don't condemn overall innocent Israeli citizens, getting killed. Obviously, the Hamas attacks. But at the same time, the whole propaganda, like, oh, they're putting babies in the oven, burning babies alive. Like you mentioned, not rocket science, brother, like, oh, women getting raped in the street and all that. There was still some violence that I don't condone. But you saw the same propaganda being done to Saddam Hussein in 1991, saying babies were getting ripped off of their incubators and whatnot. And how U.S. does the same play over and over again, dismantle a country. If you want to look at who I think Dave Smith, libertarian comic, always says, you want to look at who America's next enemy is, look at who we're funding now. All right. And dude, we just see it over and over again. So it's great to have outlets and breakdowns like these for us to get the information. There's still some things I don't agree with both sides of the issue, with Palestine as well as Israel. But obviously Israel has become just sort of the behemoth that has been a big one of the big reasons behind a lot of these global takeovers, occupations, and then kind of just partnering with the U.S., to keep colonizing. So, but yeah, the topics like this are real important. Anything else you guys want to add before we move on to the next topic?
Well, this is a good one. But yeah, I just want to, just to end it, I think, yes, you look at who we fund next, who we're funding now to see who we fight next. But it's just important to understand, that even when you look at the migrant situation, right? You see this influx of migrants coming to the border. They're being shipped around the country, bussed around the country, flown around the country. And on one hand, we can laugh and say, ha, Chicago's a sanctuary city and New York is a sanctuary city, and that's what you get. But in the reality of it all, what we have to remember is our government has destabilized these countries, right? The United States government said Venezuela was a failure as a socialist nation. It does not tell you that it destabilized Venezuela. It put sanctions on Venezuela. It put blockades on Venezuela. It put obstacles in the way of Venezuela's ability to have self-determination in its own domestic and international affairs. Mm-hmm. And so those people leave this nation that they have impeded in some way and come here. And so these people come here because America has beat its chest, calling itself the greatest nation on earth and that capitalism is the greatest financial system on earth. And people have come up here chasing this lie. And so as much as we can be upset that you have all these immigrants coming up here, we need to remember that the people in charge of destabilizing all these countries are our government officials: Victoria Nuland, Hillary Clinton, John Bolton, Abrams, what's his name? Mike Pompeo, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, George Bush. We need to remember Jake Sullivan, Avril Haines. We need to remember these names and all these different people and look them up if you don't know who any of the people. Rewind it and put it in slow motion. These are the people who destabilize these countries, who's killed presidents, who've ousted presidents, who have had political opponents of peoples and parties that they would support jailed. Right? This stuff isn't coincidental. So our country's government, our country's government officials have dirty hands, and we have to suffer the consequences. The people on the ground have to suffer the consequences. They're not going to Nancy Pelosi's house They're not going to George Bush's house. They're not going to Joe Biden's house, right? They're going to our neighborhoods. They're going to our houses. So, but I'll let you, if you want to read this article, you want me to read it.
Yeah, if you were not rocket science, brother, whoever wants to read it, or jump in.
Yeah, I'll read this one. Let me, because I actually caught a clip. I caught a clip of this this hearing. But yeah, so from Common Dreams, we got Racist Morons R Us by Abby Zemed. So there's so much malign idiocy abroad in the land. We don't usually bother to stop and smell the stench. But the travesty of incident Tom Cotton channeling his inner Joe McCarthy during a Senate hearing, ostensibly about children's online safety, in order to mindlessly badger TikTok's Singaporean CEO on his alleged ties to Chinese communists, because all Asians look kind of the same and are probably communist spies, right? Was just too much. Have you no sense of decency, sir? Clearly not. Cotton's deeply stupid, even more deeply racist hissy fit came during a Senate Judiciary Committee hearing titled Big Tech and the Online Child Sexual Exploitation Crisis, during which lawmakers grilled 5 tech bigwigs, including TikTok's Shou Zai Chu, X's Linda Yaccarino, and a craven Mark Zuckerberg, about protections for young people on their platforms. The hearing comes in the wake of last year's report by the Tech Oversight Project, finding that Google, YouTube, Twitch, Apple, and all the others are rife with multiple offenses, from violating children's privacy to sexual harassment to complicity in pornography and drug sales, even as Congress has repeatedly failed to pass laws that would actually protect kids online. Because Republicans love grandstanding and committee and commie baiting, and hate TikTok for being based in China and popular with generally liberal young people. Several zeroed in on Chu. But none came close to the bullying Senator Cotton of Arkansas, who sees Marxists everywhere, and whose wee little brains seem to struggle with the fact that Chu could be Asian but not Chinese. Ominously noting it was a hell of a coincidence Chu was appointed CEO of TikTok shortly after the Chinese Communist Party bought a stake in the site's parent company, ByteDance. Cotton went in for an idiotic kill, noting that you often say you live in Singapore, a small, independent Asian nation that is not and never has been part of China. Cotton asked, "Of what nation are you a citizen?" Chu, matter of fact, Singapore. Cotton, "Are you a citizen of any other nation?" Chu, "No, Senator." And then, after determining that yes, Chu has a passport from Singapore and no, he does not have any other passports, Cotton wildly, repeatedly pivoted to the ever lurking in his wee little brain Chinese Communist Party. Listen, this could go on forever. I want to leave this with y'all. What do y'all think on this? We know how it goes.
I'll go real quick. All right, so this may be more a little conservative inklings reaching in me. I get the concern with China. Once again, there is not a secret as far as the China's history of their business acumen when it comes to whether you open a gold mine up there or any sort of business that can pretty much the source of that business can get siphoned. China's constant sort of badgering of the U.S. over the years. We can go back to Clinton signing the NAFTA agreement, shipping jobs overseas starting in the early 90s. There is concern about China's business acumen. Not to say we don't accuse everybody of being part of the Communist Party, but at the same time, there has to be at least some borderline concern when it comes to any Chinese-based businesses, because once again, they are pretty much under the umbrella of the CCP. With that said, Twitter, especially before Elon took it over, was rampant with child porn. This would have been like, once again, individuals like, tweens sexting each other. They think they're sexting another teenager ends up being a 40-year-old man in a basement. Now they're getting like sort of they're getting coerced into sharing stuff, and they post the stuff and threatening and leave the stuff up. So a lot of that, some of that stuff Elon cleaned up when he first took it over, but a lot of that's still there. So I see the concern there with X. Once again, there can be a lot of fear mongering with China as well. A lot of it can be overblown, but the Chinese Communist Party does exist. And I think Abby here, she's based in some aspects, but at the same time, this comes the kind of the white liberal sort of bleeding heart. Everybody should. And sometimes when you have such a big heart, your brain ain't that big as a result. So I think sometimes to just give China a pass, CCP a pass, oh, it's great, it's fine what they're doing, and just calling everything racist, in some aspects, we still have to keep an arm's length to China. But I do appreciate some of the points and the acumen she does bring up. While at the same time, you know, the Chinese Communist Party, there's money, there's tentacles, and everything from the NBA to, you know, manufacturing and Apple. So their tentacles have been in a lot of things. There's a great docuseries called China, the Enemy Within, and all the money and different Chinese students getting sent to different institutions and academia. So their tentacles are in a lot of different industries. That don't mean we fearmonger and like trying to run after every single person is Asian or Chinese. But I think she's maybe blowing up the sort of race card a little too much, the virtue signal for her glorious sort of, you know, virtue signal for all her friends. So there is a concern with China. We should still be, you know, cautious with China. But yeah, I think things about whether the CEOs and, you know, whether he's from Singapore or not. Either way, ByteDance has a hand in on TikTok. There are some concerns, but I think it's a little bit overblown on both sides. Just my short opinion.
I don't disagree with you 1,000%. I'm right there with you on that. Go ahead, concern.
So I actually watched the Glenn Greenwald kind of broke this down a bit. And so, like when the CEO says, like, I'm Singaporean, one of the things about Singapore, like Singapore and the U.S. have a military alliance, and so they do drills together. And like the guy was like, yeah, I served in the Singaporean military for like 2 years. And the guy went to like the London School of Economics or whatever. And so what Glenn was trying to, the point Glenn was trying to make, which I can see, you know, is like the guy's just a capitalist. Right. And like this is the issue that I have with Republicans or conservatives, however you want to look at it. This is my issue with them. They want to act like there is such a thing as a and I mean, you know, the neoliberals do it too. Liberals do it too. So it isn't just conservatives. I have my own issues with liberals though. But this is one of my issues with conservatives. They try to act like that there is a conscientious capitalism, right? Like there isn't a capitalism that at its core is concerned completely with profit, maximizing profit at all costs. And so even if the guy isn't, let's say he's not pro-China, right? Because Hawley's like, hey, your wife is American, your kids are American. Do you have American citizenship? And he says, no, I don't, not yet. And it's like, I was thinking about this when I was at work a couple days ago. But like America really has become a transient country for rich people. When you're poor, you're an American, and it don't mean anything. It has no value. You're just an American. But when you're rich, you're an American, and you can have a citizenship here and anywhere else and whatever, and it's great. And if you don't like it, you can leave. But if you like it, you can live in Manhattan or LA or Beverly Hills or whatever, and you could just be filthy rich, and you can live in South Beach, and it's a great place. You know what I'm saying? And so, like, you know, you want people to take these unity pledges or purity pledges or pledges of allegiance, and simultaneously you want to say, you know, come to America, you can make as much money as you want to. And you can't have it both ways. You can't have a country where you allow people to have citizenship
kind of getting back to the whole Joanne Reid point. You can't have a country where you allow people to have citizenship at birth, bar nothing, and then try to put some kind of stipulation on how they make money or who they do business with. I mean, that was what McCarthy, this is neo-McCarthyism. The same way you see the left has taken this Russia lunacy to, really ridiculous levels. The right does the same. Do I believe that if Russia was able to, do I believe that if they were able to, they would try to do something to undermine the U.S. government and the inner workings of the country? Yeah, I do. And I think China would too. And do I believe the U.S. is doing the exact same thing? Yes. I believe that in the global marketplace, all three countries are doing their damnedest to get an advantage on each other. China and Russia less so, because they have a partnership that they're trying to build. But when I say less so, if they're trying to do it with the U.S. and Russia, or U.S. and China at 100%, then Russia and China might be at 80 or 90%, which is still a lot. But you still want to have a strategic advantage. And so this idea that we're going to single out Russia or China having undue control over social media, when we know Facebook is censoring United States citizens, when we know Twitter was censoring United States citizens, journalists, publications at the behest of the United States government in violation of the Constitution. How can I be afraid of China? My own government is doing it to me. When you look at the Black Uhuru movement in Florida and St. Louis, the United States is trying to give them 15 years for being so-called Russian agents. And all they have done is use their First Amendment right to free association and free speech to voice their political opinions about the working of the country. But I'm supposed to be afraid of China?
Base.
And this is the thing we have to understand. Like I said about the migrants, we have to figure out a way. We'll have to figure out a way. We'll have to figure out a way to come together and actually do something revolutionary. Set aside our the intricacies of our political differences and understand who the enemies of the people are. The people who want us to eat bugs, the people who want to tell you that men can be women and vice versa. Those are the enemies of the people. The people who don't want you to own things. The people who want to fly around in private jets and make you ride a bike or walk or drive an electric car with a 200-mile range that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. They want you to use electric stoves. No more gas, right? Those are the enemies of the people. Not somebody who might have a different opinion on abortion or gay marriage. That's not the enemy of the people. We're all just trying to get along on the ground. But not rocket science, brother, has to leave. And so to our guest. Hopefully he'll have an opportunity to come and spend time with us again, fellowship with us again on Uncomfy Truths. I hope he enjoyed his time, and I would like to let him have parting words.
Wow. Hey, listen, I still got a few minutes, but I can't say enough how seriously you killed that, right? I mean, this is just ridiculous that we're having these discussions. And I did want to speak on one thing, though, real quick about this young lady, and I think you killed it too, is this. She needs to be worried about something else. And that's what America's doing when it comes to the real politics, right? It's allowing folks with loud mouths to talk about real random shit. And these white liberals are throwing trash in the room so you can't even see what's really on the floor. And so they're more problematic. They're just as problematic as a warmonger because they help shield us from the fact that the war is being set up. So then when the war pops up out of the middle of nowhere, apparently, then the story can be crafted that is totally concocted and we didn't see it coming because they were taking up the air in the room. So this broad and this dude, yeah, he gets to get grilled. And I mean, yeah, sure, Cotton has some reasons of, some McCarthyism and all that good stuff, whatever. But at the end of the day, I mean, listen, this matters as much as you give it credence, and CNN is part of the problem too. This is not even news. This is what the reality. This is not even news. This is entertainment, just so people can have something to say about something that has nothing to do with them right now. What you gonna do? Get Cotton fired because he asked these people these questions? What you want to do? You gonna stop using TikTok? Neither of these are happening. Let's just move on.
Base. Couldn't have said any better. Not rocket science, brother.
Exactly.
We appreciate you. Thanks for dropping in on us on this episode 18. We're gonna be at episode 20 soon enough. You're welcome back anytime. We're probably gonna keep floating between Fridays, Saturdays, bi-weekly. But yeah, one more thing. Since you gotta pop out of here, just to kind of lighten the load a bit. I had to throw this on y'all. A little quick Super Bowl predictions. Anybody watching Super Bowl? Can you care less? Or before you head out, not rocket science, brother. You watching it? Could care less. Or
I'll be honest with you, man. Listen, I was riding into this with the Detroit Lions. I was gonna do all sorts of stuff for the Lions, but 49ers and Chiefs, I could care less, man. Like, I don't even follow sports, but I tell you, that was the only reason I would have followed it. So, 49ers can lose and the Chiefs can fall off the map for all I care. In the Super Bowl, the whole stadium could catch fire.
I just want revenge. I don't even like KC at Mahomes, but they beat 49ers just as revenge for our Lions, and I'm cool with that. That's just my little take. But
that's I concur. I mean, I'm not going to watch it. I don't really watch the Super Bowl. I work Mondays. Most people work Mondays, and the Lions would have made it.
Yeah,
I would have been in Vegas.
Yes,
but I'm not standing up to watch two teams that I really could care less about. I do hope San Francisco loses because they beat the Lions.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Thank you, gentlemen. I greatly appreciate your hospitality and having me here today. I really do
appreciate you coming and joining us, man. I really, really do appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the show.
All right, my guy. Talk to you next time.
Yes, sir. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. All right. So once again, Uncomfy Truths, y'all. We out here every Saturday / every other Friday or Saturday. I am Conservative Brother Daily here with Conspiracy Brother. Feel free. We also have a Give, Send, Go. If you want to make a contribution, we're trying to get more of that together. And we are streaming on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. Feel free to like, comment, share, subscribe. You always got to say that because of what you got to do nowadays. Or post in a live chat during the show. We're live right now on all platforms. So, we want to get into our boy, our mans in them, as y'all like to say. Nearly 70% of Chicago voters unhappy with mayor's job on migrant crisis. No shit. This is from Illinois Policy, Dylan Sharkley. Chicago voters disapproved of Mayor Brandon's handling of every issue, but nearly 70% found fault with his handling of the migrant crisis. A new poll showed crime and housing disapproval were not far behind. New polling shows 69% of Chicago voters disapprove of Mayor Brandon Johnson's handling of the migrant crisis, with only 23% approving and 8% unsure. Johnson's handling of crime saw 60% of voters disapproving to some degree, with half strongly disapproving. The Illinois Policy Institute poll of 800 registered Chicago voters conducted on January 16th to the 21st by Echelon Insights also found majority of voters disapprove of Johnson's handling of all 6 issues surveyed. Voters ding Chicago mayor on all issues, especially migrants. So there's some fancy little bar charts we have over here. Overall, 29% of Chicago voters approve of the mayor's job, up slightly from 28%. Yeah, they call that slightly in October. The share of voters somewhat or strongly disapproving of Johnson's job grew from 50% to 57% since October. Nearly half as many voters remain undecided about him. Chicago Mayor's Johnson approval in past 3 months. Poll over there. Johnson won 52% of registered voters in April's election. Usually a mayor early in the term is more popular with voters. Besides former Mayor Lori Lightfoot's and Rahm Emanuel's vote woes, Johnson's 28% approval rating from October was the lowest for a mayor since 1979. That's when the blizzard hit. Many streets were unplowed, and a few months later, Mayor Michael Bilandic's re-election bid failed. His approval rating is a sign Johnson may need to change his actions to increase his favorability with voters. It may also mean his mansion tax proposal on the March 19th ballot faces headwinds from his lack of approval. If voters approve, the tax would raise the cost of selling a property valued at $1 million or more, which in Chicago means $400 million. He projected and higher taxes would hit 9 businesses for every mansion in taxes. A small business owners trying to retire would face the tax on what likely would be their greatest asset. And for a homeless program, Johnson has yet to detail. So a lot here, conspiracy, bro. I got a lot to say about it, but you go ahead, kick it off first, but leave me some table scraps too.
Yeah, well, like I was saying, you have these people, and I don't know. I mean, we can look at, are they funded by George Soros or some other nefarious
Maybe
people who are trying to destabilize the country for some reason, right? Like the whole idea of the great replacement theory is
it's real.
It's
real.
Politicians have talked about it on the left. Bernie Sanders, Bill Clinton, they have talked about great replacement theory where, you get foreigners to replace American citizens in work and voting, right? So I'm not even gonna give any energy to that, right? Because that should already be accepted,
right,
as a strategy. But what I will say is that it is deeper than I think even people understand, because, like I said, our government goes and it destabilizes these countries. And then those people come up here. And then after they come up here, they destabilize our country, either the wages or the housing arrangements, the employment situation. And then what? And we have seen politicians in Congress talking about trying to allow illegal non-citizens, to be members of the military. And in Illinois, they passed a law that would allow non-citizen immigrants, illegal immigrants, to become police. What are the implications of something like that? What are the long-term implications of allowing a people who do not share a cultural value with you? And I understand that there's the diversity of people in America, right? So I'm not even looking at this from the eyes of, we all come from Europe or something, because, I don't share that ancestry. But what does that say when you have people who are directly from a foreign country and you allow them to serve in the military or you allow them to be police? What does that do? What are you trying to accomplish when you shut down schools and you fill the schools up with migrants? What message are you trying to send to the rest of not only your citizens, but to the rest of the state or the country? What are you saying? I mean, and it's the same when you look at the U.S. and how we send funds to foreign countries when our country is falling apart. What are you trying to tell anybody? So I'll stop right there.
I would say keep cooking, man. Keep cooking. You know, I got the I got the Toy Story meme in my head right now because you hitting on all the points, man. It's just sad we gotten to this point where once again we can get into I can go down to Democrat, blacks vote Democrat, like just in lockstep for 60 years, and it goes back to you get what you voted for. I mean, you have Lori Lightfoot, who during COVID was just one of the tyrants as far as literally saying on camera, we will cite you, arrest you for going outside in a public park that I pay my own tax dollars for and get arrested for not wearing a mask or not complying with the record rampant crime in my own neighborhood that I pay taxes on. And you just see as a collective, I think, I'm sure, I don't know if it was a full landslide, but they elected Brandon Johnson, just literally just gave it to somebody worse. And we're now seeing the result of that. Like you mentioned before, George Soros, these George Soros funded politicians through his organization, Open Society. I know there's some ties there. You know, we can maybe go up to Politico or whatever the name of that website is. There are going to be some ties there. And this goes to show the great replacement theory, I'm sorry, y'all, is real. And I was watching, I just couldn't help. I went into a little rabbit hole, watched a couple of the hearings, kind of like the city council. I think they had one like at a high school where they had a lot of the people. There was like this park, this recent park that they're having the migrants stay in. And apparently this park was, you know, like at least in that community, I can't recall what neighborhood in Chicago it was, but it was a very popular sports park. There were a lot of youth program activities, and a lot of seniors would go there and walk during the day. You know, a lot of senior meetups, and then like a lot of youth sports programs. And they had a line out the door. I watched maybe about 20, 30 minutes of it, you know, and you had people, you know, they unloaded on how they feel. You know, and once again, a lot of these voters were like, "Oh, we voted for him. How could he do?" You know, so I was like, "Well, you did vote for it. We warned you." But if black people aren't at least waking up to the fact that the great replacement theory is real, and it's you, they're replacing us. We've been waking up in droves. Once again, I'm conservative brother Dave. I'm not telling you got to become a Trumper. You got to go running into the arms of the Republican Party and become like one of these Hodge twins or Candace Owens and none of that. I'm just saying that we already know the Republicans ain't shit. We already know they ain't for us. We already know like what you know what they got going on over there. They're not for us. They tell us right to our faces. But at least we now know who our enemy is, as Malcolm X says. We at least know that's the fox. Well, they're not really the fox. They're kind of like they're like the tiger, maybe the bear tells you who they are. The Democrats, though, the foxes, they're going to say, yeah, come on over here. We'll help you out. We'll give you this little carrot that you kind of come here and do that. So I think black people, we ain't got to run and become Republicans tomorrow. But you have no problem acknowledging the Republicans aren't shit. You know, we've been fed that since we know that. But I'm not telling you to become Republican. I'm just telling you that you need to at least look over here and realize the Democrats ain't shit either. Recognize that both parties ain't shit. Just have that humility to be like, you know what, I think I've been, you know, I'm kind of starting to see the light. And if black people collectively don't start to see the light on this, this is going to come to Detroit. It's going to come to, it's already in Boston, all the other cities. Detroit's at some point is going to reach Detroit this year. All right. It's just not being talked about yet. Gretchen Whitmer, Michigan governor, full sanctuary state, pro migrant. So I could go into about this, but I think the biggest thing is people have to realize when you just keep blindly voting because you've been voting Democrat your whole life and you just have these, and I'm not even saying like just vote for all Republicans, but if you have this straight Democrat ticket mentality and you're not looking at the person who's funded by them, maybe vote Democrat here, Republican there. I'm not saying all Democrats are bad, but when there's people we've been warning you about in their agenda and you just refuse to listen to it, and now this is in your neighborhood now. This is happening. This is real time. You know, so that's all I got, Conspiracy Brother. Anything else you want to add before we move on? I could rant too long.
Well, like what you were saying as far as understanding about voting and being able to say, the Republicans ain't worth nothing, and being able to recognize the Democrats aren't even. That's a big part of it. You have to be able to say, both of y'all, like I said, we gotta have we gotta have a revolution. We need to have a political revolution. I'm not saying it has to be like violent or anything. I'm not saying that.
Right.
But we need to have Give me 1 second. I'll be right back. I got a book for Christmas with the Constitution in it and all these other U.S. political writings. I want to get it. I want to just read a little bit of the beginning of the Constitution.
Yeah. All right. So while once Conspiracy Brother gets back, just to once again hit on that whole saying, all skin folk ain't kinfolk. I got a lot of love for black people, a lot of, I want to say politicians, but at the same time, it's this weird lockstep hold that the Democrats have on black people as a whole. Democratic Party plantation, I call it. So I'm not saying like you have to get off of the Democratic Party plantation porch and go running right to the Republican plantation porch. Why don't we actually get off of the Democrat porch and just sit in the middle and start building our own porch? Republican Party plantation porch is way over there. Like, hey, come on down. We don't really agree with you. You don't really like y'all, but y'all can come anyway. I'm good, but you know what? I'm going to start building my own porch over here. And guess what that might look like? Well, conservative brother Daly, are you saying that you're going to just throw your vote away on an independent? Or, yeah, maybe. Or I may abstain my vote abstinence. Dr. Boyce Watkins talks a lot about this, is that, I have the right to vote, but I also have the right to not vote. I have the right to vote third party or vote abstain. And a lot of people just like, no, 50 million people talking about, no, we can't do that because there's only two different parties. Well, 50 million of y'all could have made a huge difference, but you guys are all thinking the same thing, thinking the same, and like, oh, we're not going to vote. We're not going to vote third party because it's not going to make a difference. Well, there's 50 million of you guys thinking that. Y'all would have made a difference, but you guys thinking the same thing and don't realize it. So that just goes to show, like I said, we need to at least acknowledge that both of these parties aren't for us, haven't been for a long time. It's just you got one bear, like the Republican on one side, whether they're like, some sort of animal, whatever it is, just going like, we ain't for you. We don't like it. We got our agenda. We got these common interests. Like, we want to shut the border down. That could help you guys out indirectly. We also want to get rid of A, B, and C going on that could affect you as well. That could help you, but it happens to be a common interest of ours. And it's like, okay, well, I don't really agree with everything the Republican Party stands for, but there are these one or two common interests I could rock with, vote for you this time around to maybe get that fixed, but I don't rock with you overall. But we can have a common interest on some things. But if you look up and you see, looking at the other party, like, I lockstep vote for you out of just doing what I'm told, but then I look up at what are our common interests anymore? Oh, you say you love black people. Oh, you're down for the people. All right, but what have you done lately? When I vote you in, what common interest do you guys have that's going to benefit my community directly? And be honest, lately, you're just not seeing that from the Democrats. You're just not. I'm sorry, y'all. I'm just not seeing it. And if that means we got to, some of us may vote for Trump and we get Trump back in just to fix the border crisis, move a couple things. He's a short-term solution. He's still part of the establishment. He's pro-Israel and all that. So just something to simmer on and think about. Conspiracy Brother, you there?
Yeah. So this is the Declaration of Independence. So this book I have is the U.S. Constitution and Other Writings. That's what my book is. It's got the Declaration of Independence, the Constitution. I've got Emancipation Proclamation, the Homestead Act, the Gettysburg Address, Lincoln's second inaugural address, the 13th Amendment, the Mayflower Compact, the Silence of Dogod Letters, the Edict of the King of Prussia. I got a lot of stuff in here. The Northwest Ordinance, the Virginia Plan, the Treaty of Paris. So the Declaration of Independence says this. So in Congress, July 4th, 1776, the unanimous declaration of the 13 United States of America This is going to be the second paragraph. So the beginning of the second paragraph. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. So the Declaration of Independence outlined that it is our right and duty to alter or abolish and institute a new government if any form of government should become destructive to the ends of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Our Declaration of Independence says this. How much more do we need to take? Now, I actually was thinking, I was going to run this by you, so I don't know how you feel. But I thought about reading the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution, looking at them and maybe breaking it down, but reading them, either maybe making some shorts for our page and reading it and just kind of putting them separately, or making like a separate video and just reading it one day, just so that they can be on the page so, you know, people can hear it.
I like that. Yeah, we can even do that like before, maybe like the or during the show, and then we could clip that up. But yeah, I'm down for that.
Yeah.
Not tonight, but you know, we can definitely put on the schedule.
Right.
Yeah.
I just think, you know, what is it going to take? How much abuse are these sick elite bastards going to give before the people say, you know what? All right. Like the cartoon from the Looney Tunes back in the day with the little owl who says, I like singer about the moon and the June and the springer. His dad says, enough is too much. And that's how I feel. When is the rest of America, the people who work every day, who pay a third more for groceries, gas, and everything else, and don't have a third increase in their pay, going to get up and say enough is too much? We've had enough, and enough is too much. You know, you
base, my brother. Base.
I fully support. I fully support helping people, right? Help people. Always good. But what we should do to help the people from South and Central America, is to make sure that our government isn't going down there to destabilize their governments. If Venezuela want to be communist, full-blown communist, and institute authoritarian dictatorial rule, that's their right, as long as they don't bring it up here. If Nicolas Maduro wants to institute a policy of full-on fascist dictatorial communism, that's not my problem. It is up to the people of Venezuela to stand up and fight back. It is up to the military of Venezuela to stand up and say, we want more freedom than this. If China, if Russia, if any other country that is not the United States wants to impose a fascist dictatorship upon its citizens, it is not up to us to intervene. It's not our job. We got, like Jimmy Dore always says, you go to California and there's homeless people under every bridge. I remember the first time I went to LA, I went in like 2013 or 2014. My wife, my parents, and my little sister went. And it was the most mind-blowing thing to see on the side of the freeway, all the tents. And under every overpass, it's just tents. People just live on the street. And you want to worry about Venezuela and Cuba and Russia
and China and how they treat their people. And like one person was saying, well, you want to talk about the genocide in Palestine, but what about the Uyghurs in China? And I was watching Jimmy No. So Kurt said, are we funding the Chinese?
Good point.
You have a different obligation when you're funding a genocide versus when you are witnessing one from now. I don't even know if one is happening. I haven't ever been able to find any conclusive evidence, because what I do know is the people that I don't trust to tell me about vaccines, the people that I don't trust to tell me about Bill Gates, the people that I don't trust to tell me what a woman is, the people that I don't trust to tell me what a recession is, the people that I don't trust to tell me that Joe Biden don't have dementia, are the people telling me that China is genociding Uyghurs. Those are the same people. I don't trust them to tell me anything else, but all of a sudden they're going to tell me the truth on China.
And these are the same people. These are the same people that told you that Trump would never get elected. Oh, that crazy COVID China virus, that'll never come over to the U.S. Oh, they'll never implement mask mandates. Oh, they'll never implement the vaccine mandates. Oh, they'll never do this. They're wrong every time. And they're on the side of the corporate press propaganda. They fall for it over and over again. They're wrong. They silently walk it back, and they just keep doubling down on the lie. But yeah, based.
You want to try to tell me that these same people that I can't and shouldn't trust are the people that I'm supposed to listen to about what coincidentally happens to be an enemy of both sides of the aisle in China. Here, just we can talk about bipartisanship. George Carlin has a quote. Carlin has a quote on bipartisanship, and he says, the word bipartisan, let me see if I can find it. The word bipartisan usually means some larger than usual deception is being carried out. That's what George Carlin said about bipartisan.
Code for uniparty, bro. Code for uniparty.
That's all it is. There's nothing, whatever you, as cutthroat as the Democrats and the Republicans try to be against each other, whenever you see them agreeing, that's a sign that we're in trouble. That's it.
And a big shout out, like I said, I mean, Republicans ain't shit as a whole, but even like I even give it up to Matt Gaetz. He's one of the ones that was only advocating for single issue bills. Anybody on each side of the aisle should want that, or you're not jamming through these 5,000 page bills that they only get 24 hours to read. They got 3 or 4 dingleberries of all these other laws that they're gonna pass, and then they throw the care like, oh, if you shut down the government, oh, the people aren't gonna get their veteran benefits and all that. They use that same thing. Oh, you're trying to get rid of rich veteran benefits, and it's like, bro, he was based for doing that. The House Speaker stuff was crazy, but at the same time, we got through single payer bills and no more of these omnibus, I believe. So that was based. And when the uniparty is against him, Gates, just for that, that's a sign. Why are these Democrats and Republicans against a single payer bill proposal? That's the uniparty at work. That's that bipartisanship that they want to preach on. Oh, just be a team member. We got to get together and do it. Like, no, motherfuckers. We know what you're doing. So, another strike for my curse words on YouTube.
Oh, yeah.
Whatever.
But I mean,
free speech, y'all.
That the situation with the single bills, they you have these 1,000-page bills that you have no time for them to possibly be able to read, and they sign off on it, and they're written by lobbyists and corporations. And so we, as the people, we get sold out, and these politicians are getting filthy rich. How do you think a person can make 150, 250,000 max a year and become multimillionaires?
Something fishy going on.
Extremely fishy.
Base. Hey, but great breakdown here. All right, moving on. I don't know if we're gonna get through all this, but Y'all still watching Uncomfy Truths, episode 18. We have our next headline. We may not get through all these, but we're chugging along. So, Conspiracy Brother, you want to go ahead and read this or give us a breakdown? What we got going on?
Sure. Let's see. Ukraine says it uncovers mass fraud in weapons procurement. This is from U.S. News. I need you to zoom in a bit.
Let's see. A Ukrainian serviceman of the 80th Separate Galician Air Assault Brigade prepares shells to fire an L-119 howitzer toward Russian troops. Oh, that's the picture. So that's Reuters. Ukraine's SBU security service said on Saturday it had uncovered a corruption scheme in the purchase of arms by the country's military, totaling the equivalent of $40 million. Imagine that, the most corrupt country in Europe having a corruption problem. Who would have ever thought? That's like leaving your kids around Bill Clinton or Joe Biden and being surprised something bad happened to them.
Shocking.
The announcement of a mass procurement fraud confirmed by Ukraine's defense ministry will have a huge resonance in a country beleaguered by Russia's nearly 2-year-old invasion. Unprovoked, I might add. Wink, wink. Unprovoked. Completely unprovoked. The fight to root out endemic corruption remains a major issue as Ukraine presses its bid to secure membership in the European Union.
Oh, snap.
The SBU said an investigation had, quote, exposed officials of the Ministry of Defense and managers of arms supplier Lviv Arsenal who stole nearly 1.5 billion hryvnias in the purchase of shells.
Ukraine currency?
I guess. I didn't know what they used. I never thought about it, actually.
First time
I never thought about it.
I've seen that word.
Quote, according to the investigation, former and current high-ranking officials in the Ministry of Defense and heads of affiliated companies are involved in the embezzlement, end quote. Which, again, Zelensky, I've heard, is worth like $300 million now. He's got homes in Miami. He's got homes in New York. And it's like, bro, you weren't a great actor. So he was an actor, a comedian, but he wasn't that good. He wasn't that, in order to be worth $300 million all of a sudden. Nah, bro, you don't have it like that.
A couple music videos and like some high heels.
You don't have it like that, bro.
Yeah.
So you can keep scrolling down. Let's see.
I like these shorter articles too.
Oh yeah. The embezzlement, it said, involved the purchase of 100,000 mortar shells for the military. The SBU said a contract for the shells was clinched with Lviv Arsenal in August 2022, 6 months into the war, and payment was made in advance with some funds transferred abroad, but no arms were ever provided. The statement said, with some funds then moved to other foreign accounts. The statement said 5 individuals had been served, quote, notices of suspicion, end quote, the first stage in Ukrainian legal proceedings, both in the ministry and the arms supplier. One suspect, it said, was detained while trying to cross the Ukrainian border. Corruption within the military has been a particularly sensitive issue in Ukraine as it tries to maintain wartime public morale and present its case to join the 27-nation EU. Defense Minister Alexei Reznikov was dismissed last September over various corruption cases, despite enjoying a solid reputation in representing Ukraine in its discussion with Western allies. Although he was not alleged to have engaged personally in corruption, several cases hit the military under his stewardship, one for supplying troops with food, another over procuring suitable clothing for servicemen. I think Alexei Reznikov, wasn't he the one who supposedly had a daughter who bought a French villa for like 9 million euros? Maybe I'm thinking of somebody else.
Yeah, that I'm not sure. I'm not that well versed in that sector of it. No, I'm not familiar with that.
But yeah, I mean, as I said, Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe, and that says something to me in my mind. That says something because countries like Bulgaria and Romania exist, right? Those are countries where I feel like, you would think had more seemingly obvious issues with corruption.
Mhm.
And they don't, because Ukraine is worse.
Mm.
And so, all of this, you look at, the first impeachment, like we talked about before, the first impeachment with Trump had to do with Ukraine, right? He was trying to get information from Zelensky about Biden's dealings in Ukraine. And so it's only fitting that this corrupt country would continue to be a thorn in the side of not only Joe Biden, but the U.S. government as a whole.
Yep, and I'm gonna share for those of y'all audience some fun facts about Ukraine corruption. They signed and a lot of you may not know Ukraine corruption fun facts. Ukraine signed a multi-billion-dollar deal with BlackRock, same way Halliburton made a deal in Iraq for the same big war machine business. Ukraine has banned 11 opposition parties. Okay. Zelensky, who was installed after the military coup in 2014, but I think he ended up getting elected later in 2019. He celebrated Nazis in his own ranks, that Nazi battalion, and he persecuted Christians in his own country. He said he won't hold elections in 2024 unless the U.S. gives him more money. And like I said, to give y'all kind of like, and I need to repeat this more and more, because a lot of times with people, just how people think that the Israel-Palestine conflict started October 7th, a lot of people think Russia-Ukraine started February 2022 when Putin invaded. This is the whole back history. Ukraine was a democracy until 2014, when it had a democratically elected president that was friendly, leaning neutral with Russia. Guess what our U.S. CIA did? They constructed a coup using $5 billion, the Maidan Rebellion. They funded the Maidan Rebellion to take him out of power in Baz and Luganis. Am I saying that right? Baz and Luganis or Luganis?
It's Lugansk.
Lugansk, yeah. So after that, the U.S. overthrew the Ukrainian government in 2014. They put in a government that ended up killing 14,000 ethnic Russians in Baz and Luganis. And the citizens of Baz and Luganis, they actually voted 90%, and only they voted 90% to want to join Russia. These are Ukrainians, like born Ukrainians. They voted 90% to want to join Russia, and Putin said no. He was like, we don't want you, but let's sign this peace treaty that stops the government from killing you guys, because they're already killing their own citizens, 14,000 ethnic Russians within Ukraine. And then all Putin said was, let's do this by guaranteeing that Ukraine won't join NATO. And the treaty was called the Minsk Accords. France agreed, Germany agreed, England agreed, Russia agreed, and guess who didn't? The United States. So here comes Zelensky, who pops in out of nowhere from 2019, like you mentioned before, Conspiracy Brother. He was like a failed actor, comedian, he was like dancing in a music video in heels or whatever it is. Live your life, live and let live. I don't care, but it's like, what credibility do you have? But this guy has no political experience. This guy, Zelensky, dodged his own country's military draft 3 times, which already speak fair amount of volumes to that person's character. So he was never even an entrepreneur, never a business owner. He never ran multiple businesses like Trump. All right. So he was literally a clown of the entertainment. However, Zelensky runs in 2019, wins in a landslide of 70%. Why? Because he promised to sign the Minsk Accords when he was running in his election. Well, guess what? He gets into office, pivots, doesn't sign the Minsk Accords, because Victoria Nuland, a U.S. neocon, which I know Conspiracy Brother very familiar with, they didn't want him in his own country signing that Minsk Accord. They said they're literally going to kill him if he signed the Minsk Accords. So now you got Zelensky, is now the president of Ukraine. Russia's like, okay, we're not going to let Ukraine, this new pro-U.S. Pro-U.S. government Ukraine, get into NATO. So basically, they convinced Velasquez, and they're not going to let them come into Vladivostok in Crimea and take the only port, which is the only port they've had for the last 340 years. So Russia goes into Crimea without killing one person because Crimeans welcome them. And then Russia said, let's sign a peace treaty. They can prosper. Let's do this Minsk Accords 2.0 in March 2022. And guess what? It was sabotaged because they sent, once again, Victoria Nuland over there. They sent Boris Johnson over to Zelensky and said, tear that agreement up. And after that, Putin had no choice to evade. So I just gave you guys in about 2 minutes what really happened before Putin invaded in February 2022. All that corruption that the media is not going to talk about. But Conspiracy Brother, feel free to chime in with your final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, generally what you said was correct. But I've done some videos kind of going into a lot of detail about the history of the conflict, background information. But
fill in the gaps. I know that wasn't entirely accurate, but like a general gist,
I don't want to. I mean, there are a lot of different. Even more qualified than I would even say that I am. You can look up Aaron Matei. You can look. Who else would I say is a good?
Max Blumenthal.
Yeah, Max Blumenthal. But I would say Alexander Mercouris, Alex Christoforou. Look up the Duran. Look up Peter Lavelle and George Samueli.
The late Gonzalo Lira. We got to talk about him.
Gonzalo Lira. You can look up Garland Nixon. You can look up Scott Ritter just to kind of get an idea of the. Even Jimmy Dore has a lot of good information about the invasion and the background of Ukraine and Russia. But I mean, the situation of corruption, like I said, Ukraine is the most corrupt country in Europe. And so, as a matter of corruption, don't put anything past them, right? Don't ever assume anything too conservatively about the levels of corruption that they have in that country. And so, understand that if they can do something, they will typically try to do it. And that's not, an indictment of the people in general, but the way their government operates, they do a lot of corrupt things. So, it is what it is.
Yeah.
But
all right.
There's a reason why the U.S. and the different politicians here are trying to keep certain things hidden about their dealings with the country and the things that they've done in the country.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's another can of worms at Ukraine. I think just before we move on to this topic, I think there was on some list, like number 2, I think is number 1. But I think there was Ukraine made some list where it's like the number 2 most corrupt country in the world. I'm trying to look up what the list was. Yeah, according to Transparency International, Ukraine is the second most corrupt country in Europe, but I think it's the first. Because, of course, they probably just going to say Russia. But anyway. All right, so the average American household expenses are $6,081 a month or $72,000 a year, but the median annual household income is just $74,000. This is from Janine Mancini over at Yahoo Finance. All right, so with inflation impacting budgets, many are seeking ways to manage their expenses effectively. The 2022 Consumer Expenditure, a survey by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, reveals that the average American household monthly expenses totals $6,081, equating to $72,967 annually. This amount includes costs for housing, transportation, food, and essential categories. For a family of 4, The average monthly expenses range from 7,875 to 9,168, with the variation largely dependent on the ages of the children. This range indicates the increased financial responsibilities associated with raising a family, including costs of childcare, education, healthcare, and necessities. Single individuals have comparatively lower average monthly expenses, totaling around $4,337. This figure reflects the costs associated with independent living, such as housing, food, transportation, personal expenses, and which are typically less than those of larger households. Married couples without children incur average monthly expenses of approximately $7,100. This amount suggests that even the added cost of raising children, couples still face significant expenses related to maintaining their household, lifestyle, and future planning, such as savings and investments. When considering these figures, it's important to compare with average household incomes. In 2022, the median household income in the United States has $74,580, according to the U.S. Census data, a decline of 2.3% decline from 76,000 in 2021. The juxtaposition of income expenditures highlights the financial tightrope many households walk. While the average expenses seem to align with the median household income, note that these are just averages. Individual circumstances such as family size, location, lifestyle greatly influence both income and expenditure. Households must often make tough choices to balance their budgets, especially in times of economic uncertainty and rising costs. According to Ramsey Solutions, the average monthly household housing cost stands at $2,000, constituting the large expenses of most households. This includes rent or mortgage payments, property taxes, homeowners, utilities, and furniture. Transportation costs average $1,000 per month, encompassing airline tickets, fuel, insurance, vehicle repairs, and car payments. Food expenses come in $780 monthly, with a split between groceries and dining out. Healthcare averages $488 a month, covering insurance premiums, out-of-pocket medical costs. Entertainment, which includes like streaming services, hobbies, pets, amounts about $288 a month. Other expenditures, a broad category encompassing personal care, books, alcohol, tobacco, miscellaneous items. Total $246 monthly. Cash contributions include charitable donations, support payments, average $230 a month. Apparel, related services costs, an average of $162 a month. And let's see here. And educational expenses average monthly. Based on these numbers, many households are barely making ends meet. With inflation impacting budgets, it's vital for families and individuals to seek ways to manage their expenses. And then we got a little from budget tips down here, but yeah, that's about it. So, conspiracy, brother. This is your article pick. Go ahead and give us your thoughts on this development.
Well, like I've said, we have a country that allows, or we allow these politicians to give money, our money, to foreign countries. We've given Ukraine something like $150 billion or something like that, or $120 billion, in the EU has just approved to give them $50 billion, $53 billion, I believe. And you're trying to give us tips on how to budget our money. Like, it's not possible. You know what I'm saying? If the median, now, I'm no genius, and I'm no mathematician, but I believe the median is the middle 50%. Not the middle 50%. You get the median. Let me see. Let me look just so I can. Median is, in statistics and probability, the median is the value separating the higher half from the lower half. So it may be thought of as the middle value. So 1, 3. So if you have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, then the median is 4.5. If you have 1, 3, 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, the median is 6. Okay. So the median home value income, is 74,000. That means the middle number, smack in the middle. So 50% of the people are below it, and 50% of the people are above it. That's that's the middle number.
Yep.
Everybody under it is dying. They're dying. They can't survive. They're dying. And until you get, I was looking at something, they were talking about inflation, and they said in order to purchase a home in the United States now, the average home price is like $400,000. So you need about $174,000 a year to have like 2.5 times your yearly salary in order to purchase a home. And so I would say, anything short of like 100,000, you're dying. You're still dying.
Mm-hmm.
So these numbers, right? Again, maybe this may be the theme of 2024. What can we do to have some kind of revolution? Because we want to talk about the migrants, and they're an issue, and I wouldn't dispute that they're an issue,
Right.
But why are they coming here? What caused them? Who just leave? Nobody just leaves their home and travels 3, 4, 5,000 miles on foot. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. You know what I'm saying? When is the last time you were like, man, I'm going to walk for hours one direction?
And what kills me about that is like, how many of those same countries can we just literally walk into? You know how many countries would just reject Americans just coming across or doing any sort of like asylum, so that they're like they're going to reciprocate that?
Go to Canada.
Most countries won't. They'll turn you right back around.
Canada. You can't just walk into Canada. They won't allow it.
But we don't go after them like, oh, you guys are cruel, horrible people. Like, we don't throw that back at them, but oh man.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It makes you wonder, what is the objective of the people who institute these types of policies, or the people who recommend these types of policies? You can want to be compassionate,
right?
But what are you really trying to do when you don't advocate for the United States not to bomb places and not to destabilize places? But you advocate for us to allow people to come here to be illegal and to be police officers, to be illegal and join the military, to be illegal and vote, to be illegal and have a license, to be illegal and you know what I'm saying?
Just take the resources from our neighborhoods, our black neighborhoods.
Right.
And from low income neighborhoods in general, right? What is the intention? What is the intention? There has to be some hidden objective that I'm not aware of, that we are not, on the surface aware of, because it cannot be a coincidence. There are no coincidences.
They want to push and kill them. This is the last final blow to the middle class. And this is a pundit. I was kind of shocked to agree with him on this. Charlie Kirk over at Turning Point USA. And he kind of called it, as far as like, you have more Republicans or just conservatives that are calling out the hardship of the economy, of inflation. And like, these are just issues that people are having regardless of their political affiliation. And he was just calling out all these out of touch elites. Once again, a lot of Republican uniparty types as well. There's a Republican elite class, but you see a lot of this sort of gaslighting and denial on the left. A lot of these kind of these rich white liberals in like their Upper East New York, Soho areas, or whatever they are around the country, where they may not be hurting because they're at a certain income level at their elite status. They're like, no, I think everything Biden's doing is great. The economy is great. Yeah, everything's fine. But they're so out of touch at their own level that they can't even identify with the average working class family, whether it's a working class Democrat family or a Republican family. It's the elites, that the professional managerial class, they're doing just well enough to where they're not feeling the hurt, and then they sort of gatekeep and they sort of rally around the global elite agenda because they think it's not going to affect them. They haven't hurt yet. It hasn't gotten to them yet. They think they're in the club where they're going to be immune to everything, but they're just not. It just hasn't hit them yet. So there's that whole piece. The PMCs, the black bourgeoisie class, the regular bourgeoisie class, the professional managerial class, they are kind of they're doing just well enough to where they don't feel these initial kitchen table hurt. And they keep thinking, well, I got a spot too. Like, I'm going to keep doing this and keep carrying water for the Democrats and the global elites because I can get a seat at the big boy table one day. But they don't know that, what, y'all are next on the list. You guys are what's for dinner. It's like a quote going, don't if you don't have a seat at the table, don't be surprised when you're on the menu. When you don't have a seat at the table, don't be surprised when you're on the menu. So a lot of these PMCs and black bourgeoisie class, some of them we know in the group chat, that's all I'm going to say. A lot of them think that they're already at the table. They already think like, what, I'm in a protected class. I'm doing, like, whether consciously or unconsciously, I'm doing these sort of carrying water for the elites, to get my spot. And like, what, that spot in the elites, that window closed 20 years ago. So you're just the PMC trying to manage the masses because you think you do enough. You can get into that club when that club's already closed. So that's why you have the gaslighting that, there is no recession. 5 ways the economy is actually doing great. It's all in your head because you have not only the global elite pushing the propaganda, but you have the upper middle class bourgeoisie PMCs that are doing just well enough to where they think they're in the club and they're safe, and they want to continue gaslighting the rest of us. So just wanted to kind of shed some light there. And that came from Charlie Kirk over at Turning Point. And that was pretty based. I just got to give him that.
Well, what were you saying? It was something you said it a while ago, and I wanted to remember it because I wanted to comment on it. Oh, you were talking about all the liberal.
Kind of the white liberal elites. Yeah, there's Republican elites as well, but there's a lot more on the left. The Biden.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is a funny thing. So like Tom Cotton, that senator who was interviewing the CEO of TikTok. He graduated from Harvard. He's from Arkansas.
Right.
Ted Cruz graduated from Yale.
Mm-hmm.
Right? All the people that work on Fox News, they live in New York. They don't live in Idaho.
Right.
They don't live in Iowa or Indiana.
Right.
They live in Manhattan too.
Mm-hmm.
These people go to these same elite schools that they claim to hate. They belong to these same elite clubs.
Right.
And they get on TV and act like, we're tired of these these liberal, lazy, whatever.
Political cosplay, political theater.
Right. And like what you were saying about, you were saying something about, people, why don't you just do what I do and live in my neighborhood like the elites? But here's what the conservatives will do. they want everybody to work like dogs for nothing.
Right.
Oh, look at this guy. He works 30 hours a day to support his family, and he only made $10 an hour, but he never had insurance. But now his kids can be doctors. And it's like, you shouldn't have to live that kind of lifestyle in order to make it here.
Right.
You shouldn't have to have that kind of, insurmountable story to survive in this country. That shouldn't be the prerequisite. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, base. That's base. Yeah, that's all I could say. It's just ridiculous, kind of where we are in the world now. This is going to be a great one. I got a lot to say about this. But Conspiracy Brother, you want to go ahead and give us a rundown on this one?
Sure. Let's see. Everyone's favorite witch.
Yeah.
Everyone's that Paul Mooney joke. He was talking about the Queen of England. He said, if this is the Queen, what the fuck does the witch look like? So sorry, Dad. That I was a quote. I didn't cuss. That was a quote, so that don't count. Quote, dangerous, end quote. Pelosi calls for FBI to investigate ceasefire supporters. So everyone's favorite wine aunt / grandma, because she seems like she's drunk, but she's probably just had a stroke or something. Right. Quote, she is calling for effectively more surveillance and potential criminalization of protesters by suggesting falsely that they have foreign links, end quote, said one critic. Another article from Common Dreams. The New York Times reported Sunday that more than 1,000 Black American pastors have joined the widespread call for a ceasefire in Gaza. U.S. Rep. Nancy Pelosi suggested the demand was, quote, Putin's message, end quote. And there you go. The conservatives talk about China. The liberals talk about Russia.
Putin.
Said the FBI should investigate groups that are speaking out about Biden's pro-Israel policies. On CNN, the former House Speaker, a California Democrat, told Dana Bash that the, quote, call for a ceasefire is Russian President Vladimir Putin's message, end quote. And she thinks some of the protests that have erupted across the U.S. since October to demand the U.S. push for an end to Israel's killing of civilians in Gaza, quote, are connected to Russia, end quote. Quote, I think some financing should be investigated, and I want to ask the FBI to investigate that, end quote, Pelosi said. A number of progressives pointed out the demand for a ceasefire is hardly coming from the fringes of American society, but rather from more than 2/3 of Americans in a November poll by Reuters Ipsos. 3/4 of Democrats in the survey backed a ceasefire, along with half of Republicans. The Times detailed calls from more than 1,000 Black pastors who represent hundreds of thousands of congregants across the U.S. who have written open letters and spoken to White House officials at sit-down meetings in support of a ceasefire, warning that, quote, it's going to be very hard to persuade our people to go back to the polls and vote for Biden, end quote. That's good news. The Intercept reporter Prem Thacker pointed to other groups supportive of the call, including the Democratic parties of Arizona and Texas, the United Auto Workers, which endorsed Biden last week, Big Mistake, and Doctors Without Borders. Writer and researcher Abdullah Shihapar denounced Pelosi's comments as, quote, stupid, end quote, but was among those who cautioned against dismissing her plan to ask the FBI to, quote, investigate, end quote, certain pro-Palestinian rights protesters and groups. Quote, she is calling for effectively more surveillance and potential criminalization of protesters by suggesting falsely that they have foreign links, end quote, said Shihifar. Pelosi's, quote, serious and dangerous policy suggestion, added journalist Jeet here, quote, echoes LBJ Nixon and law enforcement. Abuse of law enforcement, end quote. Nihad Awad, executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, or CARE, said the group was, quote, deeply disturbed, end quote, by Pelosi's, quote, downright authoritarian, quote, comments. Quote, sadly, Rep. Pelosi's comments echo a time in our nation when opponents of the Vietnam War were accused of being communist sympathizers and subjected to FBI harassment, end quote. That was even earlier than that, way earlier than Vietnam. Awad said, quote, hundreds of thousands of Americans, including many young people, progressive activists, and Jewish, Muslim, Palestinian, and Black Americans, have been protesting to call for a ceasefire in Gaza, end quote. Quote, instead of baselessly smearing those Americans as Russian collaborators, former House Speaker Pelosi and other political leaders should respect the will of the American people by calling for an end to the Netanyahu government's genocidal war on the people of Gaza, end quote, he added. Pelosi's comments came days after a poll by The Economist/YouGov showed a full 50% of Americans who supported Biden in 2020 believe that Israel's bombardment of Gaza, which the U.S. has helped to fund and has vehemently defended for nearly 4 months, is a, quote, genocide, end quote. On Friday, the International Court of Justice issued an interim ruling on South Africa's case against Israel, saying it is plausible that Israel is committing genocidal acts in Gaza. Instead of calling on the Biden administration to heed the preliminary ruling and stop aiding Israel, or even pushing the White House not to sacrifice crucial votes on the interest of backing genocidal violence, Democratic strategist Waleed Shahid said Pelosi was spreading, quote, unacceptable disinformation about the positions of the vast majority of Democratic Party voters, end quote.
Okay, all right, conspiracy brother. Let me go for this one. I know you got a lot of smoke to say, but I'm gonna get mine out first. All right. So a lot to unpack here. First thing I'm gonna have to say is that the chickens have come home to roost. The chickens have come home to roost. You know, there's that saying as well. Don't be careful dancing on your enemy's grave because you just might fall in. Now, the pendulum always swings back eventually. And how many times have we talked about when it came to COVID, demonizing people that didn't want to get the vaccine, ostracizing them from society. We couldn't go to the restaurants. We couldn't go out places. Then you saw with J6 and a lot of the propaganda with that, demonizing Trump supporters, calling them all like insurrectionists, white supremacists, the unrelenting weaponization of the DOJ going after Trump and the J6ers. And guess what? This reminds me a lot of Cop City. How many of those Cop City protesters were full-on liberals who demonized Trump supporters and J6, yeah, go ahead, throw them to the wall, you know? And how many? Let's admit it. I'm pretty pro-Palestine. You know, I'm not pro-Israel, most definitely. But we have to admit the awkwardness. How many of these pro-Palestinians were full-on liberals who demonized anyone that didn't want to take the vaccine, who demonized just Trump supporters and J6 and all this other sort of woke stuff, and now they're seeing the pendulum come back on them. Now they're seeing for the first time what that other side of the censorship of the attacks of the government weaponization looks like. They got a taste of it with the Cop City protester. The same RICO charges going after Trump and the J6ers, those same RICO charges are being used in Atlanta against the Cop City protesters. So now, I'm sorry to admit it, but a lot of these ceasefire supporters, I stand with innocent Palestinian people. I don't condone Hamas's actions, but a lot of these pro-Palestinian protesters had it coming. y'all were wrong on a lot of stuff, and y'all went after a lot of different people. And now the same powers that be that you were on the side of power, you felt so emboldened. Guess what? It's now turning on you. So no sympathy, no violence for me in this area, but that's all I'm gonna say for right now. So, conspiracy brother, you feel free to take the mic.
Well, this is again, I mean, like we talked about with China earlier.
Yeah.
What is the difference if a government employee, an elected official, compels a private company or compels a government agency or government agents to violate the constitutional rights of U.S. citizens? What is the difference if China does it with its own citizens? What is the difference if China does it against us? At least China has no allegiance to me as an American citizen. China is not duty bound or legally bound in any way to protect or to honor my rights as an American citizen.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who we put in office are. And they'd rather have you distracted by the fact that China may or may not be an authoritarian wasteland, right? An authoritarian hellscape. Maybe they are. But that's for the 1 billion Chinese to decide.
Right.
That is for them to rise up and stand against. It's not my decision. It's not my business. But all these politicians make money off of the military-industrial complex, investing in the military weapons manufacturers. And so they have an interest. They make more money when we sell more weapons. And it's as simple as that. Nancy Pelosi, if you go to the website Unexpected Whales, you can see Nancy Pelosi's portfolio. And she is not even the most egregious in Congress, but she has consistently outperformed I think the Dow and the NASDAQ.
I wonder why. She got a plug. She got a plug, right?
Right.
Husband named Paul.
If you go on Unexpected Whales, because they're supposed to, members of Congress are supposed to report their investments within a certain period of time.
When we go
if you go and check it out, you can look at her investment. There are even some investment.
Is that Unexpected?
Say it again.
Unexpected Whales?
Yeah, it's called Unexpected Whales. And there are some investment websites that will allow you. She's not even the worst. There are some that are like, if you pull it up, you could see it. But if you look, you can invest based on, like, there's a Nancy Pelosi mutual fund or something that's based off of the configuration of the stocks that she owns. And so, you have a lot of growth. There's another who's like way, way, way worse than she is. Let's see.
Yeah, that site didn't work.
Unusual well.
Unusual. Oh.
Usual well.
All right, hold up.
Yeah.
I think I may have heard of that one before. I'm familiar with Senate stock ticker. Yeah. There's a lot of.
Yeah, and so you can follow political Congress portfolios, and
yeah, it's taking a while to come up, but it's loading.
But it's because they could essentially engage in insider trading because they know what companies the government is going to sign contracts with and how. So
Cool. Bet. All right. Well, I'll check those out. It's just taking a long time to load for whatever reason. So we could just pop over to the next article. This is from, what's that?
I think so let's see. Garrett Graves has 172% year-to-date growth on his portfolio.
Not bad.
Yeah, 172% is fantastic.
Yeah.
Chuck Fleischman, 113%. Don Bayer, 36%. Let's see. Nancy Pelosi has 84% return on her investment for the year.
Don't mind my noise. I'm just doing a little multitasking in the background. But yeah, keep going.
So they've locked it. So you've got to be a premium member to see the return data for the different members. It used to be free, but monetize everything because why not? So
Capitalism.
Right. Well, I mean, and that's the thing, this was done as, at least in the beginning, I thought it was done as kind of more of like a public service. But people do invest. They do invest with this information. So, yeah. But I think I'm gonna have to call it the night.
Yeah, it's getting late. Yeah.
We've hit a lot of topics.
We did.
Topics, almost 3 hours. So
yeah, this might be a record. So yeah, if you want, we can. You want to cut it off here? Just do one more, and for the night.
Well, we've kind of talked about this one, the UNRWA and the Western nations coincidentally pulling out of funding.
Well, we don't have to do this last one. I'm just trying to pick maybe like a culture topic. We don't have to really get into Hunter Biden. It's just gonna, let's do this last one, this DEI one, and we can end it right.
Read it.
Yeah, another 5 minutes. So we can end it right at the 3 hour mark. Right. So a lot of, just to put everybody on, once again, Uncomfy Truths. We're about to wrap up our 3rd hour, episode 18. No, I don't want to sign up. AP. All right, hold on. All right, so this is from Associated Press. Grant program for Black women comes under tough questioning in key anti-DEI lawsuits. A small venture capital firm faced tough questions from conservative judges Wednesday as it defended a grant program for Black women-owned businesses in a lawsuit that has become emblematic of a growing legal backlash against corporate diversity programs. The Fearless Fund, I am familiar with this. I think they were featured on the Earn Your Leisure podcast, I think earlier this year. So I think I listened to one of the interviews of one of the ladies there. The Fearless Fund, which provides early stage funding for businesses owned by women of color, is asking a 3-judge panel in the U.S. Federal Court of Appeals to lift an injunction against one of its programs, the Strivers Grant Contest, which provides $20,000 to businesses that are majority owned by Black women. The conservative group American Alliance for Equal Rights filed a lawsuit last fall arguing that the program discriminates against people of other races. The hearing in Miami on Wednesday is intended to decide whether the grant will remain suspended for the duration of the lawsuit. Questions by the conservative-leaning panel, consisting of 2 judges appointed by former President Donald Trump, one appointed by Barack Obama, suggest the Fearless Fund will have an uphill battle. Judge Kevin Newsom, a Trump appointee, pushed back against the Fearless Fund's argument that grants are protected by the First Amendment because they are charitable donations. Wait, hold on a second. Push back against the Fearless Fund's argument that the grants are protected by the First Amendment because they are charitable donations. He asked the Fearless Fund's attorney whether the same protection would apply to a contest open only to white applicants. That's questions frequently raised by Edward Blum, the conservative activist who leads the American Alliance for Legal Rights, who was behind the Supreme Court case that ended affirmative action in college admissions. So, some more. Anything you want to speak on this, conservative brother? I mean, conspiracy brother? I think we got about the gist of it. Unless you want me to keep going.
It's fine. I think one of the things that we've seen happen consistently is that race-based policies have been shown to be unconstitutional. And so anyone who is interested in doing anything that would seem to address issues on a race-based perspective, and it's, for me, it's kind of a strange thing because, like we've talked about before, the whole concept of race goes back to scientific racism. And, race doesn't exist. And like anybody who still kind of participates in that whole thing is kind of tacitly approving to the concept that race exists. And it doesn't exist. It is scientific racism is what it's called. But what they have shown is that if you do things that are ethnic or lineage based, where you can show a harm against an ethnic group or a shared cultural group, you may be able to constitutionally address your issues. Then that's what you have to do. And anybody who's still trying to, in the face of these recent rulings overturning affirmative action in these ways and race-based policies in these ways, who is still trying to use race as a means to alleviate any harms is unserious. That's my, legitimate and honest assessment of the situation. You're not serious because they have already said that's unconstitutional. And so stop, you're just not serious if you're continuing to do it. Is it more difficult to use ethnic based or lineage based harms reductions processes? I don't know. But I know that one way is not going to stand constitutionally, at least it hasn't recently. And one way can. And so if you're serious about what you claim to be trying to address, stop doing it on a race-based issue. That's kind of my, thoughts.
Hey, I think we can end it there. That's a great nightcap. I can't really speak much else to that. So yeah, gonna be some tough roads ahead as far as that goes. But thank you everybody on Tendon and Comfy Truths. Episode 18 is officially in the bag. Appreciate all y'all for coming out. Conspiracy Brothers, especially on the East Coast, for being up late. So I appreciate you hanging in there. And I'm kind of slow to the chats. I just saw your chats. I didn't realize we went over a bit. But this was good. This was good. Glad we're back at it. And what's that?
I was just saying, it's no problem, man. I'm glad to be able to. Spend this time with you.
Yeah. Yep. So we will be back. Our normal recording schedule every twice a month, bi-weekly. So we're gonna be back next. We're gonna give the next week off because of Super Bowl Sunday weekend. So we'll be back either Friday the 16th or Saturday, February 17th. Once again, streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey. So appreciate y'all, and we will see you guys next time. Keep speaking truth. And we're just a black face trapped in a woke place trying to figure all this out. So we'll see you next time.
All right. Peace.
Yep.